Good morning. Good morning, rise and shine. Welcome, welcome, welcome for those that are awake, moving about. Sentencing for this grandmother. I actually wanted to come on a few minutes early to share the story. There's an interesting video we covered, I feel like it was like a year or 2 years ago. Really messed up story. They're getting ready to do her sentencing. Her name is Tracey Nix. Let me see. I was wondering how old she was because I was telling the story to my mother. Tracey Nix, how old? Let's see. "67 years old from Wauchula." I never even heard of that place in Florida. It's in Florida. Wauchula, Florida. Wauchula. And so she's being sentenced today after being convicted of leaving her 7-month-old grandmother, Uriel Shock, unattended in a vehicle, leading to the infant's death. So this incident occurred in November 2022 when Nix returned home from lunch and forgot Uriel in her SUV in almost 90-degree temperature. Uriel was later found unresponsive and, despite resuscitation efforts, was pronounced dead. So she was found not guilty in January of aggravated manslaughter, but she was convicted of leaving a child unattended in a vehicle, causing great bodily harm. This article says she's facing up to 6 years, but this other thing here said 8 years. Court TV says 8 years, so I'm not sure if it's 6 or 8. I'm getting conflicting reports on that. And this was the crazy thing about this story. This was the second child to die under her care. So now in December 2021, her 16-month-old grandson, Ezra, drowned in a pond near her home after reportedly wandering off while Nix was asleep. Let me see what this guy's saying.
Mr. Fletcher says, dislike what Mr. Fletcher says, like what the state says, dislike what the state says. Every spectator in this courtroom will act professional. There'll be no outbursts, only professionalism, no matter who you are.
He's giving some formalities. They haven't started yet. So she wasn't charged for the first death of the grandson. This is very kind of like people were up in the air. They had a lot of mixed feelings about this. And why would the parents leave their kid again with grandma if the first child died and then they leave the kid again, another child for the second time? So 2 kids have died under her care. I don't know what her mental status is. I don't know. That's a good question, Eddie Cakes. I'm going to try to find that. I don't know if she ever had some kind of issue mentally. And that's kind of where we're at today. I will show a video after because the thing is the parents are pissed. It's kind of interesting and weird. You know, I don't know, like, you know, now as a mother, you want your mother prosecuted, you know.
Go ahead, sir.
Your Honor, at this time, would you like to hear from the state witnesses that are going to testify as to sentencing?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry, Your Honor, this is the first time I've appeared before Your Honor for sentencing. I wasn't sure if there were...
No, you're fine.
But they have witnesses.
At this point, Your Honor, the state would call Mr. Drew Shock. And where would you like?
I'm going to have the clerk swear everybody in.
I don't know if this is the father or who this is.
So the first will come to the clerk, and then he can either stand... He can either sit in the box or he can stand at the podium. It's entirely up to you. Wherever you want to stand or sit. And if you're going to stand, we're going to have you stand right there, okay? But you got to swear in first.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
And Your Honor, I'll only be putting Mr. Shock's name on the record. We'd just like to make a statement to the court.
That's fine, thank you.
Sir, could you please state your name for the record?
Yes, sir. My name is Drew Shock.
And spell your last name.
SCHOCK.
And sir, how did you know Uriel?
She was my daughter.
Okay. Is there a statement
Our daughter,
you'd
his
like
daughter,
to
yeah.
make to the judge concerning?
Yes, sir, I do. And I don't know how easy this is going to be. I'm supposed to come up here and really explain to you about my child. We've been doing this for the past 2 years. It's been tough on my wife and myself and our son, and now we have another daughter. And, you know, we're basically trying to put a price on my child's life with time. And I had all these notes and everything, and I'm up here now, and I just, but basically what we're doing is we're justifying my child with time served in prison. And a lot of you know here, this is not the first time this has happened. This is the second time.
Second time.
Fortunately, we weren't able to make that case with the jurors due to circumstances, but everybody in here knows that this is not the first time this has happened. But I'm going to keep this about her because that's what this is about. It's about my daughter. She was born on March 5th, and she was a blessing to my wife and to myself and my son. 2 months before that, we had lost our son, and it was devastating. My wife was 6 months pregnant with our daughter during that time, and it was really hard for us because she was trying to take care of our daughter, who was, 6 months pregnant, and trying to grieve for our son. And when our daughter was born, she was born into grief. But she was a blessing. She kept us because we were looking forward to her. Despite everything that was happening, we were looking forward to her taking away a lot of that pain. And she did. Yeah, we protected her more than you could imagine. As parents, when you lose a child, you become helicopter parents. You think about all these scenarios. So let me watch over her, let me protect her from this, because you have this living in the back of your mind with our son. And we were very diligent and vigilant with her. My wife and I actually got together when our daughter was born, and we set parameters because of what had happened prior. We told ourselves and said, look, once she gets up to where she can move and walk, we're going to go ahead and restrict her from this location because of past circumstances with our other son. We were nervous about her getting out and around, and when something like this happened, you recede all the way back. You want to protect everything. You put fences around it. We put fences around our oldest son. We wouldn't allow him back over there because of the situation here. But it doesn't matter, no matter how hard you try. There's just some things that you don't think about. And we, as parents, have to live with that for the rest of our lives. Like I said, no matter what we do or what we say, I'm always going to feel responsible because these are my children. I am responsible for them. So we're going to carry this, and I'm always going to think about what if. So if I wish I would have done this or done that, or if we would have known details about the prior one, if we would have. But all that is it's too little, too late. She was our blessing. When she was born, she was our angel child. She looked so much like our son, it was ridiculous. We seen him every time we looked at her. She looked at us, and it would just cut right through us, and we took that like it was God saying, here you go, here's your other shot. You know what I mean? I know this happened, but I'm going to make this daughter look just like him, and you guys are going to have this. And it was taken from us. tough. My wife and I sat here through all these court proceedings, and we had to sit here and listen to people speak as if they knew what was going on, as if they knew what was happening, and none of these people had a clue. Now, once they asked us, hey, Drew, what happened? Hey, what really happened? That's what I would have loved to have told them. How everything happened, how everything went down. Because it was not how it was portrayed in the courtrooms. And I was planning on coming here and explaining all that. But in the end, like I said, the result's the same. I'm standing up here in front of you guys, defending my children from a woman who took them away from us. To me, that's insane. It's insane. She's done this twice. And the fact that we're debating whether or not she deserves jail time is just insane to me.
Yeah, do you guys think she's gonna get jail time? Should she get jail
Two
time?
lives.
It's an interesting case.
To me, it's black and white.
I'll try to do another recap after they stop.
But my wife and I are the ones who are going to have to live with this. They can go and do what they want to do. 20 days locked up. They're done, forgot all about my children. Forgotten all about them. Within 20 days. Like it never happened. Going off, doing their own thing, living their own life. Making her own friends. She's not grieving. Not at all. This is the pain that my wife and I wear. Nobody else. We're here for justice. That's what we're here for. For the memory of my kids. I just ask the judge, don't let this be in vain. Because I got a son who still asks about his sister, who still asks about his brother. And as parents, we still haven't told them. But now my son's asking me what happened. And as a parent, that's the hardest thing. Because he's wondering, Dad, why'd you let it happen? I tell him, son, I don't know. We didn't see it coming. We didn't expect it. We didn't think that this would be something that would happen. Not once, but twice. I remember when our daughter was born in the hospital. All the pain that my wife and I were going through, it just faded. When we looked into our daughter's eyes, it just melted. And I can tell you this, as a father, I love my sons. They are our future, and they are my future generations, but I remember looking into my daughter's eyes as a father. This is so much different. The love a father has for his daughter, I can't explain it. I'm not saying it was, I love my daughters more than my son, but God, she can wrap me around that finger so fast. My son, I tear his butt up, when he's doing something wrong. I remember my wife went to try to get on my daughter over something silly. It wasn't nothing. She was being, and when she said, I remember coming almost unglued just because it was Daddy's girl, and it wasn't nothing major, but I don't ever remember doing that over my sons. Like I said, but my daughter, to have that taken away. Now that we have her other daughter, as a parent, it scares me. Because I thought I knew the people I was sending my child with. I thought I knew them. So much was kept from us. If we had been made aware, we would have made other arrangements. If we'd have been made aware of the medications, if we'd have been made aware of, we would have done things differently. And I blame myself because part of that was just wanting to really believe that she was different. I didn't want to tear apart a family after going through so much with this. I didn't want to destroy this. This is my wife's family. Like I said, they had their house dedicated for kids. They had a room set aside especially for kids. And I didn't want to take that from my son. And I wanted my daughter to have that. Now that's pipe dream. She was a blessing. I planned on going through and that day, but I can't still be up here and talk. We've had to relive that moment every single day. Every time it's in the paper, we had to relive it. Every time it's just so for me to sit up here and talk about that day. I'm not. Everybody was familiar with what happened. Everybody. I just want you to know that as parents, what would you guys do in my position as a parent if this happened? Not once, but twice.
Twice. That's just crazy, dude. What are the chances, right? Like, it's just nuts. How do you lose?
All we can do as parents is try to see it through. That's all we can do. Just make sure this doesn't happen again. Because nobody thought it would happen the second time.
Second time. Within a year.
I'll be damned if I'm going to stand by and let this pass me by and let this continue to happen. Like you said, we're fighting for our kids' names. We're fighting for their memory. And for somebody to just walk away, to think they just deserve to just walk away after what they've done to my family, to my son.
They were locked up.
It's insane. I can't fathom it. To be able to do this to some kids and act like it wasn't your fault, like it was. Just blaming somebody else. Not once have we got an apology.
Damn, not once got an apology?
Not once
really?
they said, Drew, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what we did to your family. I'm sorry. Not once. From any of this. I just want you to know that I'm going to continue to carry their memory the best the way I know how. I'm going to continue to raise my sons and raise my daughters to do what's right, to be God-fearing children. had some moments where I questioned everything. Well, when you go through stuff like this, you question everything. Question your faith, you question everything that you believe because you just couldn't imagine. And through that, you just, God brings you a daughter like we have now, Adrian. And like you said, when she was born, she looks just like my son and my daughter. It's the craziest mixture. But I see both of our kids in her now. And it's hard for me to still question everything because in the strange way God has a sense of humor. He gave me what I lost and put it in this little girl who has me wrapped around her finger. And right now she's about the age that we lost Uriel.
Oh, they got a new child, I guess. Oh, okay.
I see her and I see my daughter in her. I think about that accident. I think about how you can do that. We live in Florida. It's hot all the time. I know everybody knows it. You leave your car parked in the parking lot for an hour. You go to get in it. You imagine how fucking hot it is in that car. You get in, you go to the grocery store, 30 minutes. You get out and it's blistering inside that car. Every time I do that, I think about what my daughter went through for hours by herself, screaming. Can't not think about that. For what? For what? In a hurry? But I'm reminded by that every single day. Because every single day is that temperature. And every single day I get into my truck and I feel that and I think of my daughter and my heart breaks. Because I can't imagine. But I have to because she did. She sat there and suffered and screamed and flailed. We had already gotten to the scene, everything was packed up. We went to the hospital. And that's a sight you don't ever take back. Something you don't ever unsee. The love of your life laying there 11 months before, 11 months after, going through the same thing. It's deja vu. So, Judge,
Oh my God, no way.
as a parent,
Oh no.
like you said, we weren't able to get all the facts out to the jury like we should have. Because nobody in their right mind would let this happen twice. Twice. Disaster, you would just think about this when you sentence. now. You do it better than I do. All I can tell you is that this is something that we will have to suffer with for the rest of our lives. My son no longer has a brother or a sister. Take it away. And that's something that we're going to have to live with for the rest of our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything from the defense?
That's right.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schaaf. Next witness, stay.
May I just have one moment? Your Honor, the state would call Taylor Nix shot.
Okay. Ms. Nix, you're welcome to sit again in the box or stand to swear in with the clerk, please.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Ma'am, could you please state your name for the record?
Kaylin Nix Shock.
Okay, can you spell your first name?
Kailanix, and I am not legally Shock, but SCHOCK.
And I think we all know, but how did you know you were?
That's my daughter.
Would you like to make a statement to the court regarding sentencing?
I would.
Tell the truth.
Thank you. You can.
Take your time. I sat aside all day for this hearing.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Honor. I had a beautiful daughter, and her name was Uriel Jane Shock, and I named her from an angel from the Old Testament of the Holy Bible. She was nothing shy of an angel. She was my rainbow baby. You know, as much as I want to start with her, I have to start on the day that my son, Ezra Shock, died. And I have to start there because I received a phone call from my husband screaming about my son, and I was unaware of what was happening. And I got into a vehicle and I flew as fast as one can fly to 1478 Kaysen Road in Wauchula, where I called my home for a large majority of my life. And on my way there, I was very careless in driving. I could see a helicopter coming to their address, and I looked at the helicopter and I didn't look in front of me. And I had a front-on collision with a very innocent woman, and I damaged that woman. And I want to publicly say that I am deeply sorry to that family because I caused them harm in that moment, and I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that and take ownership of that. But that woman isn't the only woman that I damaged that day. I was 6.5 months pregnant with my daughter, Uriel. And in that car accident, I had a placental rupture. I totaled my car. I bailed out of the passenger window with all the airbags that fell on me, climbed through the glass, barefoot, took off running down the street to 1478 Kaysen Road. And I was so stricken by grief with Ezra that I already had put her in danger due to one circumstance. And as I laid there in Tampa General with my son, I demanded an OB team come down to the NICU to sit with me because I could not leave my son, but I could not harm my daughter anymore. And I sat there for what felt like weeks, but I'm aware that it was less than 24 hours. We decided that my son was brain dead, that he had realistically died at my parents' home and they had revived him. And so I lay there with my husband in my bed and in his bed, 6.5 months pregnant with Ezra's sister, while we took him off of life support and held him next to Uriel while he died. That was the closest they ever were together on this earth. Was her in my stomach, harmed by me. While he died. I had my daughter on March 5th. That following year, I had been on very strict bed rest. My sole obsession was Uriel. I had been told by my doctors that I needed to choose. I had to choose whether I mourned Ezra or I saved Uriel. And so I put Ezra in any version of a box that I could find inside my heart. And I put him here in the name of protecting Uriel. She was my restoration. She was going to salvage my family. And that was never meant to be her purpose. She was just meant to be a beautiful little girl. But by circumstance, she became my salvation. The day that my daughter died is one I could clearly never forget. No matter how much I wish I could wash it away and just hold the beautiful moments, it's not something that I can do. Had a family friend at my door to tell me again that my child was dead, and I screamed at him, "Why are you telling me about this? Why are you here?" And he said, "No, Kayla, it's your daughter. This man I've known my entire life was there to say to me again that I was going to bury a child." The day that I agreed to invite my mom into my daughter's life, I was afraid. I was terrified. But I wanted restoration with you. I wanted that. I wanted our family. I wanted to save something, Mom. I did. I wanted to save something. And you went. And I don't sit and believe that this was an intentional act. I wore this today. You and my dad gave me because I'm still your daughter. I'm still your daughter. And nothing is changing any of this. I still love you. I hate this. I hate that I had to choose. But you know I had to. And it doesn't change my heart. She was gone. I walked in with my husband to the hospital to identify her body. And I never felt, well, actually that's not true. I felt that air leave my body before. When Ezra died in my arms, I felt it. But this time she didn't die in my arms. She was just there. Gone. My beautiful daughter was gone. The officers on site were concerned for my physical safety in that moment. They could not rationalize how one human could bear the weight of this reality, at which point they decided to take me to Tri-County. And it's not something I've spoken on before, but they brought me to Bartow. And I was on the other side of the door. And I could hear you on the other side of the door talking as I sat there And I just remember feeling so alone in that moment. So alone, because the other thing in my head was that Drew was alone with Asher, telling my son that his sister was dead. And his next question was, where's my mom? And I don't even know what he said. I don't know what he said. But I know I wasn't there for my son. So they transported me to Lakeland. They didn't have room for me there. I sat in a chair in the lobby next to the nurse's station while they made fun of me for giving another opportunity to the person who had already taken so much. And the entire night I didn't sleep, and they talked about me. And all I wanted to do was talk about my daughter, and I couldn't say a word to anyone. I was completely and utterly alone. And morning I was exposed to horrific things. Mentally ill men across the table doing disgusting things under it, while I just sat there alone, waiting to be saved. Anybody come get me? Because I was not suicidal. And yet there was damage there too. Your daughter died and somebody's masturbating under the table. It's horrifying. And then this court proceeding began. And all I ever wanted was for it to stop. I just wanted this to stop. I wanted this to end. But I had to seek justice for my daughter and my son because I had already been forced to choose. The day we came here, I knew I was forced to choose. And I am not a mom that is going to sit down and care about my feelings as someone's child more than my God-given role as their mom. All of these decisions are things that I find suffocating. I have felt nothing shy of cornered for 2.5 years, with the only move to make is to stand up and say my children's names, say Ezra, say Uriel, say they deserve better than this, because they did. Beautiful children, children we prayed for, longed for, and cherished. But I wanted to salvage my family, and I thought that was something that could be done, because I still love each of them so dearly. It makes this so gutting. It just eviscerates me to stand here. But this court process has been skin thickening. As we've gone through, I have had to find my strength and find my voice and find a way to survive this. Survive what my children went through. My son is now 6, his name is Asher. And he asks for Ezra, he asks for Yuri, and not long ago he sat down and he just said, I didn't realize they were really dead. I didn't know that they were really dead, that they're in the ground and they're dead. And a handful of days later, he came home after going to a ball practice. He had seen a newspaper. And he spelled out the words on the newspaper, and it was a very recent one. And I certainly did not define those words for him, but he asked me why his grand was on the cover of the newspaper. And that was the first time he did not have a way out. Because I have never told Asher. I've never told him. Because I don't want to. I don't want to. He loves you. He loves you. He loves you, Dad. He loves you guys so much, and y'all's presents are missing from his life. in a way that I didn't get a vote in. And it's cost more than just my dead children, which is so heavy. It has cost my relationships with my family, my parents, my extended family. I've never felt so alone. Ever. But it isn't about my feeling. It is about what I know. And what I know is that my son drowned on a very cold day in their pond, and he drowned alone. And I know that my daughter died on a scorching hot afternoon, alone. And I had to step out of the courtroom during the trial while they described those details, because I don't feel mentally capable of hearing those more than the times I had already heard. But that absence in that room in that moment did not lessen our presence there. We have a son and a daughter that we have to go back home to. And so yet again, we stopped and we judge and choose our living children. And my daughter Adriel, 17 days away from outliving her sister. So I sit and I hold my daughter, and I wish that she knew her family. And I look at her, and I just see the beauty, and I'm humbled by God's mercies. That He's renewed, and the blessing He's given us to move forward. But it's impossible to not see my son, to not see my daughter. And as it relates to the sentencing, I've said this before, and I hate it so much, but as her daughter, I don't want any of this. And as their mother, I beg you to honor my children's deaths. It doesn't lessen my love for my mom. It doesn't lessen my love for my father. It doesn't lessen any of it. But as I've had to explain to my son, there are times where things happen and they're not on purpose, and no one meant harm in those moments. But there are real consequences. And this is a moment that I struggle to say that. Because I just want some version of family that I've lost. Family my children have lost. It's not coming back. And while there's room for restoration, I do put forth the request that you honor my children's deaths when you consider the sentencing. And I love you. That has not changed. And I appreciate you. Look at me. Thank you. This way. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any cross? All right, thank you, State. Next witness. Thank you, Mr.
You hear the mother.
I do.
Man, this is
There's
crazy, dude.
witnesses, Your Honor, and we would just have a recommendation of the court.
Okay.
Wow.
Defense, do you want to do your witnesses first, or have the state do their recommendation now, and then you present your witnesses?
I'd ask that the state do the recommendation.
All right, state's recommendation, please.
Yes, Your Honor. I don't know what process the court goes through with determining an appropriate sentence, but I can imagine it's a lot like the state when they make a recommendation. I think Your Honor and the attorneys in this courtroom are in a unique position in which we're in a system and we see a lot of things. And we realize that everyone knows there's degrees of crimes, first, second, third degree felony, but we also learn in this system that there's degrees within those individual crimes. And when I look at this case, I think you have to look at the severity of what she was convicted of, as far as on the spectrum for that individual crime, where does that fall? And Your Honor, I think you can only reach one conclusion. It falls on the most severe end. She was found guilty of leaving a child unattended in a car for more than 15 minutes, and it results in a great bodily harm. The great bodily harm in this case was a painful and torturous death. That's a fact. And in my next step, as far as making a recommendation to the court, you look at who was the victim in this case. And in this case, it was a 7-month-old. A 7-month-old is wholly dependent upon the person responsible for them, not only to be happy, not to be healthy, but to be safe. The fact of the matter is, the victim in this case should have been turning 3 years old last month. And she's not. Which brings me to the who. And in this case, who committed that crime? What position was the defendant in? She was grandma. Next to mom, she should be the safest person. And dad, she should be the safest person that Yuri could have been. Not only was her grandmother, she was a woman, as I'm sure you're going to hear, that was involved in the education of children for her entire life.
Oh.
She was a woman who
I
had
didn't know
children of her own, who had grandchildren before that. And most importantly, and I believe both Drew and Kayla touched on it, she is in the unique position, more so than anyone in this courtroom, to know what happens when you let your guard down, when you're responsible for someone who is wholly dependent on you to live. That's the process the state goes through when we're making our recommendation. And I hope the court will go through the same type of process, because I think when the court goes through all that, I'm not going to go through the facts, Your Honor said that, but when the court goes through all that, we're dealing with a third-degree felony that's punishable up to 5 years in Florida State Prison. 5 years is wholly inadequate for the damage that was done in this case. But I think when you look at everything, when you go through that process, when you look at who she was, who Yuri was, and what happened to her, while 5 years in prison is wholly inadequate, it is the only thing that's appropriate. As Mr. Schock said himself, when the court goes through that analysis, it becomes black and white. And I think the only thing that is appropriate for this court to do in this case is to sentence the defendant to 5 years before his sentence.
All right.
What's that,
I
5
have your
years?
score sheet at 44 points. Defense, before you begin with your witnesses, do you have any additions, corrections, or deletions to the score sheet?
Here you are.
Okay. State, I understand the score for severe injury is 40 points as opposed to death. And I think you're doing that based on the Brown v. State case 24 Southern 3rd 562, which cites to 3.704D9 that says victim injury must not be scored for an offense for which the offender has not been convicted. Since the manslaughter charge was acquitted, you're not scoring that. Is that correct?
Your Honor, I think you went ahead and pulled exactly what I looked at before I submitted the case law. Additionally, Your Honor, because the legislature didn't put death or serious bodily harm, I think the verdict on the first part kind of determined what was appropriate.
Correct. Instead of a 124-point sentencing score sheet, it's a 44-point sentencing score sheet.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Defense, you agree with that?
Yes.
Thank you. Defense, please go with your, whichever one you start with. Ken?
Call name Nix.
Okay. Mr. Nix, come on up.
I wonder
Again,
if
any
Grandma's gonna
defense
talk.
witnesses can either go from the podium or the chair. It's entirely up
Now
to
they're
y'all.
speaking on
Just
behalf
take a
of
seat
Grandma.
wherever you stand.
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or
Just the
affirm to
husband?
tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. Okay. He prefers to stand here, Judge, so
That's fine. Entirely up to y'all.
state your name for his own record.
None, nay, Nix.
Okay. You're Tracey Nix's husband, obviously.
Yes, sir.
You heard the testimony of your daughter and your son-in-law.
Yes.
Okay. After Uriel was born, how often did you keep her?
Depending on the week, depending on what Kayla and Drew needed, we were keeping her anywhere from 2 to 5 days a week.
Wow.
Okay. All right. And you've heard them talk about the first child. And you were there. We've gone over that. You got a ruling on that. And I know you testified that Tracey and the baby.
That's really interesting. Just pausing for a second. Uriel was the second child to die. Okay. And the whole story, I forgot the mother they left another child in the care of grandmother again. Just putting the story out there. The mother had to go do something. And in the video that I'm going to play after all this, I thought she said it was like a one-time thing. If I heard this correctly, they're claiming that they had the child at 2 to 5 times a week. That's a lot for somebody that supposedly already killed the first child.
Talk about. And you've heard them talk about the first child. And you were there. We've gone over that. You got a ruling on that. And
Did I hear that right?
I know you testified that Tracey and the baby were asleep and you slipped out and went shopping while they were asleep. Regarding the board.
Yes.
Okay. Did you or do you knowledge Tracey try to keep any of those details from you?
I didn't hear. I wanted to hear that part again.
Was born how often? Testimony of your daughter and your son-in-law.
Yes.
Okay. After Uriel was born, how often?
Yeah. Uriel. After Uriel was born, how often?
Keep her.
Depending on the week, depending on what Kayla and Drew needed, we were keeping her anywhere from 2 to 5 days a week.
Okay.
That's crazy.
All right. And you've heard them talk about the first child. And you were there. We've gone over that. You got a ruling on that. And I know you testified that Tracey and the baby were asleep and you slipped out and went shopping while they were asleep. Regarding the board.
Yes.
Okay. Did you or do you knowledge Tracey try to keep any of those details from you?
No, we did not.
And Tracey had a red Lexus at the time of the passing of Uriel, is that correct?
Yes.
Did it have a child in the back seat?
No, it did not. That was an option, and when we purchased the car, we did not get it.
Okay. Let's talk about Tracey after Uriel's passing. What did you do in connection with the red Lexus?
The Lexus became an issue in the garage, just sitting there. Tracey would not touch it, get in it, or drive it. She didn't want anything to do with it because it brought back too many memories. And so on a scheduled service date at the dealership, I drove the car there, get tires rotated and oil changed, and have them do their inspection on the car. As I was there talking to different salesmen, one of them struck up a conversation with me, noticed that the car we had was low mileage, and being a car salesman, offered me a really good deal to swap cars. I thought about it for a little bit because I also felt like that might be kind to Tracey to remove the car from our location. So my only question to her was, is the color okay? She did not have a choice in it. That's why the car is also solely in my name now.
So you got rid of the red Lexus and you bought a new Lexus.
Yes.
All right. I want you to tell us, Honor, the changes that you have noticed in Tracey since the death of Uriel.
Tracey mourned in silence. more at the house, more away from people. There wasn't any hope of really, other than the time that she went to Beef O'Brady's with some friends there, taking the baby with her. After that, there was no hope for us to really go anywhere in town to eat. She wouldn't go outside hardly at all. She used to love to do yard work. She'd spend hours online, and sometimes she would take a bath for days. The days seemed to run together. Her eating habits changed over to Oreos and ice cream. She didn't care what she ate. And she wanted to, a lot of times, she didn't want to come to the other end of the house, where the dining room was, or, where we had just a casual table. She wanted to eat in bed. She did not want to get up. She suffered. I hope this wasn't intentional, but social media and the news media were brutal, and a lot of the information that was posted was totally incorrect. They didn't have the full story, or they only had enough to make it sensational.
So tell us the full story.
Her sleeping habits were all over the road, but she got to where she stayed awake till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning watching TV or surfing the internet. And then as soon as she woke up at 7 or 8 in the morning, TV had to be on again. There were also one vivid part that I really noticed, and it affected me also. We had no holiday celebrations in our home for 3 years. No Christmas decorations, no any other decorations. The only celebration we had was before Yuri passed. We would have family dinners at our house that Drew, Kayla, and children were invited to and brought to, and we tried to celebrate as family. But of course, we haven't done that since. So,
Okay. You had some pigs at your house. Is that correct?
yes, we did, in enclosed pens. Our other 2 grandsons had 4-H and now FFA pigs that we allowed them to have at our house because, of course, we were further out in the country and they were able to come and work with them, clean up after them, feed them, water them, and on occasion, the boys would want to go fishing in the pond, would want to do stuff. Tracey never, ever came out. Tracey never spoke to them, ever, during that time. Whenever those boys were there, they were outside with me and me only.
What about after Uriel's passing? What did she do regarding her hobbies?
2 of her hobbies were very important to her, only because she was passionate when she did something. One of the hobbies was wanting to learn to play the piano. As soon as Uriel passed, she hasn't touched the piano again. I continue to wonder if I need to get rid of it, move it out, try to be kind and remove that from her view if she ever got to come home. The other is she loved to do oil paintings and drawings. And she used to be very proficient in those and could do them, do an individual unit fairly quickly. But since Uriel, she would start on one, she would paint some background, didn't like it, paint over the whole thing. Sometimes she'd do that 3 or 4 times. She just couldn't focus enough to get back at it and get it finished. And she just got to where her painting just stopped.
Tracey was taking medication during this time.
Yes.
She had been taking medication for many years.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you have any knowledge as to whether these medications were affecting her?
At the time, looking back now, after I've been reminded of it, after I've had it explained to me, and after I've read about it, I look back now and say, yes, there were changes.
I won't get specifically with you. Yeah. Since your passing, has Tracey been to counseling?
Yes.
Can you tell
She
me
has
about
one, I believe it's psychoanalysis. We would drive to Punta Gorda once a week. And once a month, she would go to, I believe it was a psychiatrist. Again, I'm not sure of the
Did that come during the trial?
name of
Because-
their specific talent, but
What was that after?
going to the one in Lakeland was the doctor that could issue her or prescribe her medications if she so judged that she needed it. After a year and a half, the doctor in Punta Gorda left their practice, moved to New York, and we were able to find a comparable doctor in the same building with the other doctor in Lakeland. So we consistently, once a week, would go up there.
Did she also have some
Gotta use the
inpatient
restroom.
treatment?
She had inpatient treatment first at Peace River.
You know how
Center.
long that was?
That was for 2 weeks. And then I hunted all over the eastern United States trying to find a facility that Tracey felt like would help her. She had specific criteria of what she felt like she needed help with. And so I hunted, and finally was able to locate a facility up in St. Cloud. And that facility allowed her at least a 30-day treatment. I think it was actually a little longer than that, but she was able to be inpatient. I was able to visit her once a week on a Saturday, but that was it. There was no other discussion or conversation with her.
Do you have family photos at the house
Yes, we do, of all of our family.
still there?
They're still there. We still have pictures of Uriel and Ezra and Asher, and we have Adriel, and we have our other grandsons, our other daughter and son-in-law, Drew, Kayla, and our extended family, all on the same rotating picture screen.
I'm sure you love your daughter Kayla. as well.
Yes, I do. And it has been difficult to follow the direction of the court that we not talk. I tried to go to visit with Asher some. We tried to remember every birthday, every time, for both Asher as well as Drew and Kayla.
Kayla, I'm sorry, Tracey loves her
Yes.
kids and her grandkids also.
Yes,
Sure, yeah.
very much so.
Thank you.
Any questions by the state?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Next witness, Mr. Fletcher.
Call Dr. Estevez, Your Honor.
All right, let's bring him on up. What's his first name?
Is that correct?
Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
No problem. You other sit. You other sit, Charles.
That's fine.
Please, John.
Yes, please go ahead.
State your name for the court, please.
Ryan Estevez.
And sir, how are you employed?
I am self-employed as a forensic geriatric psychiatrist.
Okay. And can you tell briefly, if you can, your education, training, and experience in that regard?
Sure. I have degrees from Harvard, Stanford, Tufts, UCLA, University of Florida, and University of Texas, and another one from Stanford. The degrees are as followed. It's a 4 years degree, a bachelor's degree in psychology, a 2 years master's in public health, a 2-year degree in social psychology with an emphasis in criminal justice and delinquency, a 4-year medical degree, a 5-year PhD in experimental health psychology with an emphasis in neuropsychopharmacology, a year degree in medicine and neurology, a 4-year residency in general psychiatry, and 3 separate 1-year fellowships in geriatric psychiatry and neurobehavior and forensic psychiatry.
Okay. Are you board certified in any areas of medicine?
Yes, I have 6 board certifications. They are in general adult psychiatry, forensic psychiatry, geriatric psychiatry, consultation liaison psychiatry, addiction medicine, and psychosomatic medicine.
Okay. And have any training, education, experience in psychiatry and the law?
Yes, so social psychology, if you concentrate on the law, that has to do with how groups act in general and what motivates groups to act. And so I have a master's in social psychology, but I also have a forensic psychiatry training, and that is psychiatry as it relates to the law. So what motivates people's behaviors, and in that case, not just in general, but as they apply to criminality, and how that interacts with the law, how the two systems interact.
Okay. And have you testified in that capacity in court?
Yes.
And any idea how many times in Florida?
I don't keep track of how many times I've testified. It's in the tens, 100 times perhaps.
Okay. And you testify in other states also?
Not anymore, but I have testified in California and in Texas.
Okay. You also have a degree in psychopharmacology.
Yes, that's part of my doctoral degree.
Okay. You're published?
I am, yes.
Okay. And you were obviously a witness in this case?
That's correct.
Okay. You've been involved in this case for well over a year, perhaps?
I think since spring of 2023.
Okay. And can you tell the court what you did in this case?
Sure. So I did what I do in any case that I'm asked to look at, and that's get information. I requested all of the available medical and police and any other information that might be relevant. In her case, it was around 1,100 pages of medical records. Those include outpatient medical records from the last 10 plus years, the inpatient records that were from Peace River, psychiatric hospitalization that she had, as well as the inpatient records from Blackberry, where she was at. I also that went through all the police reports, the discovery documents, information pertaining to the actual event. Spoke to anybody that would speak to me, friends, family, colleagues. I ordered an MRI of her brain, spoke with one of the country's leading neuroradiologists regarding that study, got neuropsychological testing, and then most important is that I did a psychiatric evaluation of Miss Nix, and have followed up with her on multiple occasions.
Okay. And did you form any opinions to a reasonable medical certainty regarding this?
I did.
Can you tell the court about that?
Sure. So, you start out with not knowing anything other than kind of the headlines of what happened. A child is with guardian and grandparents in this case, and dies. So that's got a very visceral, sort of shocking feeling to it. And you begin to step back, at least in my position, is trying to figure out, well, what, if anything, contributed to that? You're, somebody that's in my position that has spent a lot of time in dealing with the criminal justice system. The first thing that you think of, well, there must be drugs or alcohol or some other malicious motive. This has got to be a bad person, a careless person at least. Those are the initial things that you're thinking of that go along with that sort of visceral response. As I kind of went through the record, and then as I, after evaluating Ms. Nix and then reviewing all of these records and documents, speaking to people, I got the exact opposite impression. Now, granted, I've evaluated the whole spectrum from serial killers to clergy, and teenagers to people that are over 100 years old. So there's a lot of variability there, but Mrs. Nix is one of the most genuine people I've ever interviewed. I found her sincere. I found her honest, remorseful, and just a good person. I don't frequently interact with people that have her profile in my capacity. So this doesn't add up. Something just doesn't add up. So I was thinking after speaking with some of her colleagues, particularly a boss of hers who had hired Tracey after she had retired from the school system. And Tracey had dedicated her life to children, to protecting children, educating them, had an exemplary record, was promoted to positions of leadership and responsibility. She's a very detailed person, she's a very intelligent person, a very organized person. And so this made sense that one of her, I don't know if I want to say friends, but a colleague that was on friendly terms, hired her to be she was opening a school, and she hired her to be a teacher. And a very interesting document that was, in all of these hundreds and hundreds of pages that I came across is a very well-written, articulate, detailed letter of explaining to Miss Nix why she would not be coming back to the school the following year. And I was amazed at the things that were in there. It was because she was doing things that were not like she had been previously, and also not the way that I had seen her or had tested her. These things were as simple as giving the wrong homework to children, swapping homework assignments, giving books from last week as opposed to this week, just these very simple sort of errors that have to do more with attention, concentration, focus, and those sorts of things. And when I spoke to the principal about this at Hart, she said, it couldn't make sense of it. It was so out of character for her, but nonetheless, it was there. And so this did not reconcile with the testing I had done with her and the testing that I had then gotten, further testing with a neuropsychologist. It said that she wasn't having difficulties with her attention, concentration, and focus.
I can't focus.
I think I kind of solved it when I got to her list of medications from the pharmacy that you get. You know, they can give you, if you order up historical record of the medications that she's been on for the time that she's gone to that pharmacy, and went back about 15 years, I guess. And at some point in the early to mid-teens of this, century, she was prescribed 3 different medications of note. She has something called fibromyalgia, and that's a chronic sort of vague, I would say, disease that affects your joints and your muscles, but in different places. You can't always pinpoint, but it can be very fatigue-causing. Sometimes it can hurt really bad, other times not as much, but it's a chronic sort of thing. So she was prescribed a muscle relaxant for that, a muscle relaxant called cyclobenzaprine.
Yeah, I took that bullshit
And
before. I didn't like
there's
it.
2 things that are notable for that. Number one, we know that medication does not work for fibromyalgia. So that's one thing. Another thing is that we know that medication is sedating, but it also has a property in it called anticholinergic property. That just is a fancy way of saying it has this specific side effect that targets the brain and can affect your attention, focus, and concentration. Okay? So she was taking this medication, which I thought was interesting, and she was taking it for years. She was also taking some Ambien, that's a Zolpidem, that's called a Z-Med.
She was lit up.
That's a medication that we also know, it's actually got a package insert warning that it can cause issues with clarity the following day after taking it. And it's only supposed to be taken for 8 weeks, and she had been prescribed that for years. At about a...
You said you're only supposed to take it for...
Well, according to the package insert, yeah. That was the only, the intention of the package, according to the package insert, is to only take it for 8 weeks. So a short-term fix for insomnia. Now, she has something called sleep apnea. So it's another reason why you wouldn't give that type of medicine to somebody with sleep apnea. You do other things, behavioral interventions. She takes what's called a CPAP machine to help her sleep. But there are other things that you should do if you're having difficulties with sleep. So that's another one. And then she was given another medication called lorazepam. That's a benzodiazepine, which is also supposed to be only taken for a few months because it's got properties that are addictive, but it also can cause sedation, lethargy, and difficulties with attention and concentration. So it becomes more meaningful. These medications have exacerbated side effects as you get older. So as you get older, this happens to everybody, your metabolism changes because your body changes. You have a higher percentage of fat and water to muscle. Your liver is not as efficient. And so medications that can be tolerated, let's say, by somebody in their midlife or earlier, a young person, can disproportionately or even dramatically affect somebody that is elderly. So this is a phenomenon that's been very well known, very well described, so much so that the guy, the doctor with the last name Beers, like the drink, came up with a list of medications, this is back in 1991, whose benefits are not as much as the risks of these medications. That was the original intent. What is causing some of these issues with these elderly people that are taking these medications? They're having falls, they're having a dementia type of behaviors, they can't concentrate, this sort of thing. Well, let's look at the medications that they're taking. So that was in 1991. Since then, they've had 7 different iterations of that. The last one they published was in 2023. It's a very complete set of medications that are potentially inappropriate for geriatric population. So these are medications that, this isn't controversial. This isn't like that some people say, well, no, those are fine. It doesn't mean that you can't prescribe it, but you better have a really good reason. There must be some esoteric or anomalous reason why you're giving it. These recommendations in the 2023 iteration were based on the review of over 7,500 studies in these medications. It's a massive review, a massive project. It's done now by the American Geriatric Society. So these medications that I'm talking about that I noticed, and I knew this because if you see geriatric patients, you should know that list anyway. So I recognize them, but sure enough, all three of these are on the Beers list. Medications that you should not be prescribing for elderly patients. These medications, each one individually, can cause negative effects on elderly people. It can cause, in the body, but most importantly in the brain. And together, two of them, three of them act synergistically. And so when I asked Tracey, what do you think happened? Why would you fall asleep? Why would you not be vigilant and alert? Something that she had demonstrated being her entire life as somebody that is committed to protecting and educating children. She didn't have a good answer. She said, I don't know. I just was so tired. I just sat down. The next thing I knew, I was asleep. And didn't have an explanation for it. In other words, she didn't know that these medications might causing it. She's taking medications that were prescribed for her. Oh. And so I think after reviewing everything that that had a real dramatic effect on her and contributed to this happening. In other words, if she had not been on those medications, I do not think that this whole event would have happened.
Talk about Ambien. What kind of dose was she on with respect to Ambien, we'll say at the end of her taking that?
I'm going to say 10 milligrams.
Well, she was on actually double the maximum recommended dose.
Oh, really?
She was having difficulty sleeping.
So how much?
Still having difficulty sleeping. The dose was doubled. I think this was less than a year from the event in question. So she had been taking double the dose for a long time.
How much is that? What's the milligram?
Okay. So according to the Beers list, she shouldn't be taking Ambien, or at least have a good reason for taking it.
Correct.
You're also only supposed to take Ambien, you said, for no more than 8 weeks.
Correct.
And from your record, you can see she's been taking it for many years.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And at some point, before she ceased taking the Ambien, and do you know when she stopped taking the Ambien?
Yes, I do actually. When she was admitted to the psychiatric facility after the incident that happened, the psychiatrist, reviewed her medications, and the first day took her off it. Said, "Shouldn't be on these medications. You're off them."
Okay. And in addition to the other things with respect to the Ambien, she was taking double the dose that a female should be taking.
Well, I would argue it was even higher because the actual dosage recommended for geriatric patients is lower than the normal adult dose. But when I was speaking previously, it was just the normal adult dose, and she was taking double that.
Anything else that you did with respect to your findings and your evaluation here?
In regards to that review, no, I don't believe so.
Pretty much covered it?
Yes.
Fair.
Please.
The medication is on the Beers list. I never even heard of that. Some Beers list, the American Geriatric Society AGS Beers criteria list.
Would she be
and
aware
beer, along with other medications
of these things? When she's on these meds, would she be aware of what these meds are doing to us?
So that's a good question, because you would think that you would, but these medications are not like having some whiskey, and you know what happens if you drink a lot of whiskey, and you're going to be drunk. You know that pretty quickly. One of the problems with these medications is that they build up over time. Let's take cyclobenzaprine. It takes approximately 15 weeks for the body to completely metabolize one dose of cyclobenzaprine. It has something what we call a half-life, which is a fancy way of talking about how fast a medication can metabolize a drug. Cyclobenzaprine has a long one. It is 15 weeks. So you can imagine taking that over time, especially if you're an elderly person, that medication is going to build up and build up and build up. If you're not metabolizing it as fast as you otherwise would, it's going to build up. And so you'll see these effects happen inconsistently during certain periods, like when you're tired, let's say, it would happen more so than when we wouldn't be. If you're not, if you didn't get rested well, and you would see them more as you age, but also the longer that you take them because of the buildup of these medications.
Joe, you think so? Grandma's going home?
People closest to her, like her husband, they noticed these things, that maybe it was affecting her, or it wasn't affecting her?
I don't think so. They can. I run a memory disorders clinic, and I have a lot of people that come in and that I pretty quickly know are experiencing some form of dementia, and I'll ask their spouse, their kids, have you not noticed anything going on? No, not really. How about the car accident, the 3 car accidents they've been in the last 6 months? Yeah, but he was tired during those days. So when you're close to somebody, and every single day, you're less likely to notice, first of all, changes that are happening. It's much easier to notice changes if you see somebody on one day and then you see them again, the same person, a month or 3 months or 6 months. Wow, they've changed, they've aged. There's a difference there. If you're with somebody every day, you're less likely to see those changes, especially if they're subtle. And so I don't think that they necessarily would have been noticed. Also, just my experience, loved ones are less likely to ascribe negative sorts of things or changes that happen to people in the worst terms. So it's easier to say someone's having a bad day than somebody's brain is failing. So that's why I think this letter that I found from her boss, her principal, that was just so detailed and so articulate, and giving out lots of examples of what's going on. She noticed that there were some changes, but she was not emotionally attached in that way. She was trying to run a school, and she wasn't with her on a single daily basis. To answer your question is, I just don't think so that you would really notice anything like that.
I'm going to try to pronounce this word. Anosognosia.
Anosognosia.
Can you tell the court what is that?
So that's a phenomenon that is described in my field that is common in mental illness and in cognitive disease, where the person does not recognize that they are either sick or that they're having cognitive difficulties. And I'm sure most people have experienced a friend or neighbor or loved one that has had dementia who has no idea that they are. You ask them how they're doing. Oh, I'm doing great, no problem. How's your memory? No, yeah, it's just great. And then they proceed to ask you, how you're doing, how your kids are for the next, 3 times in the conversation. But they have no actual understanding of that. And this also applied to severe mental illness in terms of predominantly schizophrenics that are hallucinating or having delusions, and they don't realize or recognize that these things are hallucinations or delusions. They're quite real to them.
When you began your interviews and your involvement in this case, Tracey had been off that medication for a good period of time.
That's correct. So that accounted for that discrepancy, because when I was, reading these things that had happened and their description of her versus my observations of her and this neuropsychiatric testing that she had done that didn't reconcile with that. So I've got to make sense of this data. This doesn't make sense. And she had been off the medication when I saw her over a year, when I saw her for the first time, a year plus. And so the medication finally had an opportunity to get out of her system.
This medication, including the Ambien, you indicated was prescribed to her long-term by her medical care practitioner.
Correct. So it was a physician assistant, but
Not a doctor,
it wasn't. But he was her healthcare provider. He was prescribing the medications legally to her. She was taking them as prescribed.
Okay. In your hat as a social psychologist, you've testified in court regarding the five components of justice.
So as one of the duties that I've been trained on and that I've done many times is in mitigating and aggravating circumstances for sentencing. That's done predominantly in capital cases that I've testified in, but I've done some in non-capital cases too.
Okay. And then looked at that with respect to this case.
Sure. So, I think that...
Can you tell the court?
Sure. Absolutely. I think that there are multiple mitigation circumstances that are applicable in this case. We had just talked about the influence that I don't think she was aware of at all, that the medications were having on her and how that affected her cognition, her attention, her concentration. But there are also, I'll just go through how we describe them in my field. The components of that, there's 5 different components to...
Is Grandma going to testify?
Justice and the punishment aspects of that. And they're retribution, rehabilitation, restitution, incapacitation, and deterrence. And if you look at those individually as they apply to Tracey, and that's what courts typically ask us to do, because you can't apply those fairly unless you understand or know the individual. Once you know the individual, then you can make attempts to kind of advise the court or to educate the court before they make their decision. So what are these different aspects? So rehabilitation has to do with the idea of somebody typically with a substance abuse problem or a severe mental health problem needing to get that fixed before they can kind of join society and be a productive member of society. A lot of people that don't have vocations or kind of not do anything, get them vocational training. Doesn't really apply to Tracey. She doesn't have a substance abuse problem. She's got a mental health diagnosis and post-traumatic stress disorder. It's not what I gave to her. It's what her psychiatrist at Blackberry gave to her, but I agree with that diagnosis. But she doesn't have a severe mental illness. That doesn't really, I think, apply. She also has a vocation. She was a teacher, but she's retired. Incapacitation is the idea that is part of punishment. You require the protection of society. So does society need to be protected from Mrs. Nix? And I don't think they do. She has followed her bail perfectly over the last almost 3 years. She has no prior criminal record. She's elderly. I don't think it's arguable that you need to be protected, or society needs to be protected from her. Restitution is the idea of making the victim whole. Two things. Number one, that's impossible. The victim's deceased. But how, for the other people, that the parents, the family members, how do you make restitution for a deceased child? I don't think you can. I think that's impossible. There's no way to do that. There was a civil case that they settled that is I think, attempted restitution. So the restitution that they could make, I think, has already been done in that sense, from a financial sense. But ultimately, that's not, I think, a real possibility in the death of any child. Deterrence is another one. That's the idea that you want to prevent this from happening. I think that's another difficulty in this particular case, because this was not premeditated or purposeful action, and it's hard to deter a crime that's not committed voluntarily. I think that's kind of self-explanatory. I won't get into any more of that. And finally, there's retribution. That's the idea that you are punished because you deserve it. And that, I think, what is noteworthy for that is the fact that I think that Tracey has been punished in a lot of ways by this event too. I mean, I think that regardless of the punishment she receives from the court, she's going to carry this with her for the rest of her life. And it's something she carries with her every day. It's something that will never go away. I think that that's just something that I think is going to be impactful on her and her relationships that she has, the way that it's impacted her family, etc. I think there are also practical reasons that have to be considered, such as does the state of Florida, the community, want to pay to have Tracey in prison? Is that a good use of resources? Can those resources be used in other ways? I would argue that it's not a good use of state resources to pay to have her in prison. I also think that there is potentially a disproportionate effect on her as a geriatric person that's never been in prison, of a prison sentence is given. She's, I think, almost 67 years old. We know that geriatric individuals don't fare very well in prison. They kind of, what we call age acceleration occurs in prison, is the term that we use.
You met with Tracey more than one time?
Correct.
Okay. Did you see the remorse in her?
Absolutely.
As far as what happened?
So let's let her stand up and testify. I want to hear it too.
Unquestionably genuine.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor.
Any questions? Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, questions. Okay, the state gets to ask. Okay, let's go.
I'm not a doctor, but so to insult you, sir, I'm just trying to understand.
Insulted.
Is it your opinion that this wouldn't have happened had she not been on the medication she was on? I'm just asking a yes or no question. If I got it wrong, let me know.
They won't got time for all this bullshit.
I'm pretty
whatever.
sure.
If you're going to force a yes or no question without any caveats, then I would agree with that.
So is it, in your opinion, was she the reason why she left Uri to die in a hot car is because she was experiencing side effects from medication she was on?
You're ascribing what I think is that, and what I argued was that her attention, focus, concentration, and energy were affected by the medications that she was on.
I'm asking you very particularly, can you tell us that was affecting her at the time she left Uri to die in a hot car?
Yeah.
What can you point to show us exactly that she was under the effect on that day? What can you point to?
Well, I told you, went through that at length about the effects. You want to go through the medications?
No, I'm not asking for your opinion based upon medications. I want to know, is there any one specific thing you can point to that day that shows us you're correct in your opinion? Like she was acting in a particular way on that day. Can you point to something that shows this demonstrates, other than leaving Uri in a hot car to die, this demonstrates she was under the effect, she was experiencing the side effects from medication?
I think it's a natural deduction from the review of all of the evidence.
So let me ask you this. You talked about your review of the evidence. There is a video in this case of her at Beefville Brady's. Did you review that?
Yes.
Okay. And so you got to see how she interacted at Beefville Brady's.
Correct.
You got to see how attentive she was to Uri.
Correct.
You would agree with me she was very attentive?
I do, yes.
You agree with me she took care of her needs?
Correct.
You would agree with me that she brought in a backpack full of supplies for Yuri?
I don't remember that specifically, but I'll take your word for it.
Fair enough. You would agree with me she didn't forget Yuri in the car at Beef Brady's?
No, she did not.
And when she left, and she was there for, what, over an hour?
I don't remember how long she was. I would assume it was that.
So for an entire lunch.
Sure.
And you would agree with me that she didn't leave the restaurant without taking Yuri with her?
I would agree with that, yes.
And you would agree with me that when she got back to her car, she put her in a car seat like a person should, right?
Correct.
Strapped her in?
Correct.
Okay. So you would agree with me that what you saw in that video is a person who is not exhibiting any side effects that you're talking about?
I would agree that in that particular instance, you could not see them from a perspective of somebody taking a video of that.
So you would agree with me that the person that we saw interacting with Yuri, taking care of her, supplying everything she needed, in that video, didn't exhibit any of the symptoms that you're talking about?
At that particular moment, not necessarily.
And that was 15 minutes before she got home and this incident occurred, is what the video says.
Correct.
Okay. Now, as part of your opinion, too, when you were asked about your opinion, and I'm just trying to clarify, you said that you believe the defendant is a good person and a genuine person?
I do.
Is that your expert opinion?
That would be my expert opinion, yes.
And the defendant's paying you here
Yeah, how much?
to evaluate her, correct?
That's normal.
Her attorney is.
And then you're being paid to testify here today.
I am not being paid to testify. I'm being paid for my time.
Okay, but you're getting money for being here today.
I'm getting paid for my time, yes.
Okay, no further questions.
Any redirect? You changing your opinion to the court as a result of this question, sir?
Well, just that I think that I want to reemphasize that it's not an all or nothing phenomenon if you're being affected
Audio's acting up.
cognitively with these medications. First of all, there is going to be an effect that fatigue has. I would argue that the launch of anything contributed to the fatigue that she had. But also that these things are not predictable and are inconsistent. There's times that she's going to be better, times that she's worse, much like somebody that has a dementia or a cognitive impairment. There's times that they're doing great, times that they're on. Conversations that they have that are good, conversations they have that are not. And that is very difficult to predict and just very inconsistent.
And when you're sitting in front of a child and seeing the child, it might be easier not to forget.
Well, of course, if you have that,
Site.
absolutely, if you have that stimulus right in front of you, it's much easier to attend to than a stimulus that's not there.
Thank you, sir.
Excuse me.
Yeah, you may be excused, sir. Defense, next witness.
Oh, they're coming up. So I want to see if Grandma's gonna talk. Oh, they're taking a short break. I can't. Oh, boy!
Hear ye, hear ye, hear ye.
Court's going to be in recess for approximately 10 minutes.
All right, they're in recess, so we're caught up. So what I don't like about this, and I can switch it to law and crime, maybe see if they have a better audio. What I kind of don't like is that they're like slipping and sliding and making all these excuses. I understand she has to defend herself and she doesn't, I guess, want to do time, but like it's just like no accountability to me is what it seems like. She needs to stand up and say some stuff and then apologize like they asked for and just say, I'm so sorry, this wasn't intentional, something. But they got this guy up here slipping and sliding and coming up with all kinds of shit. Now, I do think it is weird that the parents had left the child twice. The first time, okay, you don't know what, things can happen. And I can't imagine what it's like going through that. But then the second time, you're bringing your kid back again to where the first child died. And then what was interesting that came out is that they said that the second child was being taken to grandma 2 to 5 times a week after she had supposedly unintentionally killed the first child. Because the first child supposedly drowned in the pool. They found the child in the pool. The second child. So what happened was, this is what I'm interpreting. The first child drowned in the pool. They called her, and they played the 911 call. But they tell the parents, mom's rushing over, speeding and stuff, gets into a car accident. She was pregnant with the daughter, I believe. The daughter, I don't know what kind of injury she had. And then the daughter's killed, or she dies because grandma forgot her in the car and went to sleep or something. That's strange. And then there's this other stuff. This is what Amanda was mentioning. I saw this morning. They posted it on Facebook. Florida woman accused of sextorting Hardy County grandmother. So they're saying grandma was like swinging in the jail. A Hardy grandmother who had 2 grandchildren die in her care claims she was extorted by 2 women in jail. Rosanna Sanchez and Sandra Cordoza are accused of threatening to expose Tracey Nix's sexuality if she didn't pay them. Amanda said that there was rumors that when she was principal of the school or whatever, she apparently she was in the care of a lot of kids. She was swinging too. So she was transferred to a different jail and is awaiting her sentencing, which we're doing now. Poor babies. Sextortion. According to an affidavit, while in jail, 2 women, Sandra and Rosanna, came up with a scheme to get money from Nix. Dig deeper. Documents show that on February 19th, Sanchez asked Nix to write her a love letter, and Nix drafted a fabricated newspaper advertisement relationship between herself and Sanchez. After Nix read the document, Sanchez, and she's married. The husband's over there testifying and shit. She's, whatever. How long she been swinging? After Nix read the documents, Sanchez documents show that Sanchez demanded $1,000 from Nix, threatening to send it to the local newspaper if she did not comply. Oh my God. Lord Almighty. Oh, Jesus. The affidavit stated Nix called her husband under duress and asked him to trust her and bring the money. Damn, so she didn't even tell her husband. Got the homeboy simping over here. You send me the $1,000 is urgent. Maybe they're she's making up stuff. They're gonna kill me or something. They're gonna beat me up. Bring me the $1,000. When in reality, I guess they did try to sextort her. She was messing around. Maybe she was messing around. I don't know. Nick's husband met with the woman later identified as Cardoza's sister. Damn, Guadalupe. What the fuck? What the? Guadalupe in the parking lot and handed over the money. On February 26th, documents show Sanchez demanded an additional $10,000. That's why they say they try to, first of all, for men, for guys, always make sure your shit's on point. These ladies, if you don't send anything unsolicited, but if you're doing some type of stuff, whatever, even if you're in a relationship and you're sending it to your girl, or if you're having whatever, something online, make sure your shit's on point, bro. Because if they're gonna extort me, sextort me, fucking post it. Because the only thing you're gonna do is benefit me. I'll make sure my shit's on point. You can't sextort me with my shit because it'll only benefit me. So never give in to, they always say that if you give in to the sextortion shit, they're just gonna come back. You pay them one time, they're gonna come back with more. Okay, now you need to pay this. Now you gotta pay this shit. If they leak it. Fuck it. Not that I want that, but if they do, I'm making sure that's in my best interest. What am I doing here? Loosening up the mic. What am I doing? Oh, this whole thing over time has been loosening up. That's weird. So, so they wanted an additional $10,000 after the first thing and threatened to expose her sexuality if she did not comply. When she declined, the affidavit states Sanchez pinned Nix against the wall. Nix escaped and called the detention staff for help. While investigating, authorities said Nix admitted to having consensual sex encounter with Sanchez. So she's been messing around with these chicks. Also involved Cardoza. So I wonder, has the husband read this? Does he know all this stuff that's going on? And she's supposed to be grieving, and the grandkids are dead. Now I don't know how you could function knowing that because of you. Let's say indirectly, even though some people are saying maybe directly, but let's say indirectly. Maybe it is indirectly. I don't know. Indirectly, these kids are dead. Maybe this is a way for her to cope. She's here swinging in prison with the ladies. When Nix declined, the affidavit states that Sanchez pinned her against the wall. She escaped. She admitted to having some sexual encounters with him on at least one occasion. Nix also told investigators that Sanchez claimed to have different personalities and offered a voodoo ritual for a fee of $15,000 Santa Muerte to ensure that Nix's current legal charges would disappear. Investigators looked at a video footage and confirmed that Nix's husband handed over a white envelope to a Hispanic woman in the sheriff's office February 19. They also analyzed call logs that corroborated statements from Nix and her husband. Cardoza had been charged with extortion, illegal use of two-way communication, and Sanchez had been charged with attempt to commit extortion. Okay? And conspiracy. So they're being charged in a sense. So grandma got a lot of stuff going on. Grandma got these two ladies, probably even more ladies. I don't maybe grandma's having a good time locked up. Maybe she's enjoying that shit. I don't know. Grandma's, locked up and roaming and whatever. I wonder how much time she could get today, if she's going to get today. I think that this whole thing of like trying to slip and slide and still kind of avoiding accountability is what it seems like to me. It's going to kind of hurt her unless she takes a stand and apologizes or shows sympathy. It's crazy. My mic is fine. You might have to back out and come back. Some people tell me sometimes there's like a weird glitch or something. I don't know what's going on. You might have to back out and come back in. There was another video that I wanted to show you guys. I don't know if we have time to show the whole video. Maybe I could show a shorter version. They have this one from Inside Edition.
Their 18-month-old son Ezra drowned in a pond at his grandmother's house. Then, to compound their loss, less than a year later, their 8-month-old daughter lost her life after being left in a hot car for hours. And they're blaming both deaths on this woman, the grandmother. Parents Kayla and Drew felt good about leaving their son with Kayla's mom. After all, she was a well-respected retired school principal.
The children absolutely loved it there.
But 2 days before Christmas 2021, Grandmom Tracey Nix fell asleep on her couch. Somehow, 18-month-old Ezra got out of her house. He was found face down in the pond on their property.
911, where is your emergency?
That's a little baby. The grandmother's out giving him CP. Is he breathing? No.
Here's Ann Mercogliano.
The grieving parents did forgive the grandmom, believing the drowning of their son was a tragic accident.
You trusted her. She's your mother. Absolutely.
In their grief, a time of joy. 3 months after Ezra drowned, Kayla gave birth to their daughter Yuri. They even let grandmom babysit again.
And here's where the story takes a heartbreaking turn when the unthinkable happens.
Tracey Nix went to lunch with her girlfriends. She took baby Yuri with her. When she returned home, she went inside to practice the piano, forgetting that she had left Yuri in the car seat. Several hours passed. Then she realized her horrifying mistake. She ran to her car, but it was too late.
That's crazy. So grandma's here. Let's do it. Let's watch it. Grandma's testifying. Let's see. Swinging. Is she getting tattoos in jail? Grandma's wild on the loose. Yeah, let's see.
Go ahead, please, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you. State your name, please.
Tracy Howard Nix.
And Ms. Nix, obviously, you are the defendant in this case. You have 2 children?
I do.
Okay. And their names?
Kayla Suzanne Nix and Rebecca Ann Nix.
Okay. Kayla is your firstborn child?
She is.
Okay. When you were pregnant with her, was that a difficult pregnancy?
It was difficult getting pregnant. It wasn't, the pregnancy itself was not difficult, but getting pregnant was very difficult.
And how did her birth make you feel?
How did what?
How did her birth make you feel?
I'm glad that you're sitting there, Kayla, because I want to speak directly to you. That's why I'm sitting here, facing you. Your dad and I didn't want to have children right up front. And, you know, you have this thought that when you want to have children, that it'll just happen. And that's not what happened with you.
What happened? Oh.
I went through fertility. We tried on our own for a long time. And then I went through fertility drugs to try to have you. And then I went through surgery to clean everything out and to try to have you. And I tell you that because I want you to know how much you were wanted and how much you were loved. I thought you were the most beautiful girl that had ever been born on this planet. I thought you were the smartest girl that I had ever seen. And I adored you. Was I a perfect mom? No. No, I wasn't. But I love you. And I have always loved you with all my heart. And I tell you that because I can't imagine how I would have acted and reacted had you been taken from me. I cannot imagine that. And then if Rebecca had also been taken, it would have been more than I could have taken in. And that's the only way that I can understand what you've been going through and what Drew's been going through. I miscarried, but I didn't lose a baby like you've lost a baby. And I've tried very hard to understand where you've come from, where you are, and how I could be anything to you. I guess I answered that. What more?
You've been on medication, were on medication for a long time, about 20 years. Okay. Do you have any idea those medications were affecting you?
No.
Okay. Did you trust your medical provider?
I did.
Who all in your family went to this
Rebecca did, and I think Kayla did. I believe Kayla did as well.
And when were you taking off this medication?
If you'll allow me, I need to back up just a little bit. May I?
Yes.
I know that both of you have felt that I have evaded questions. I haven't evaded questions. I wasn't allowed to talk to you. I wasn't given the opportunity to talk to you. And I think that the one piece, I mean, different ones have alluded to how things happen, but the piece that has been left out is I had Uriel 4 days the week before, and I wasn't expecting to have her on this particular day. Kayla called me and asked me, said she was getting her hair fixed, and asked me if I would be willing to take her. I would be willing to take that child any day of any week for as long as they needed me to. I love my grandchildren, and I would have done anything for them. So when she asked me to take her, you know, it disrupted what my head had in mind for that day. But I was glad to have her. So after I had a prayer time that morning, and I called Kayla and asked her, I said a few ladies wanted to get together and go to Beef O'Grady's. Does she mind? She had already asked me if I would keep Uriel, and I had said that I would. I said, do you mind if I take her with me? And she said no, that would be fine. So the piece that was left out is that when I went to the glass shop to pick her up, the other Kayla Nix, or Kayla Chalk, helped me. I had Uriel in my arms, and she had the car seat. And I always put the babies on behind the passenger side so that I could see them out of my periphery. When your baby's sitting behind the passenger side, you always can just turn your head a small amount and see them. That particular day, there was a car that was that had pulled in close to the passenger side of my car, and when Kayla Schock took the car seat around to the passenger side to put it in, as I had asked her, the car was too close, and Kayla couldn't get the car seat in the car. So she came back around and she put the car seat behind where I was sitting, behind the driver's seat. And we went on about our business. She was the talk of the town at Beef O'Brady's. We thoroughly enjoyed her. She was perfect. And when everything was over and I put her back in the car seat, I very succinctly and carefully had everything all packaged up, and I slid it on the floorboard under her car seat. And she was so sleepy, I think from just being on that whole time, that I gave her her bottle, and she immediately fell asleep. And I don't live far from Beef O'Brady's, but she was sound asleep within seconds of me backing up. So when I pulled in at the house, there were roofers. We were having our roof redone, and they had asked me to not pull into the garage because he didn't know if there'd be stray nails or whatever in the driveway or on the driveway. So I backed up under an oak tree, and I can remember literally looking over to the passenger side in the back. Nothing was there. I looked in the passenger side in the front. Nothing was there. I looked at the dash. Everything looked clean. And so I got out of the car and I went in the house and began to do the things that I had on my mind to do. And this is perhaps where the medication does come in. She got quiet, and I forgot that she was there. She was quiet, and there was nothing there to remind me that she was in the car, except the things going through my head that I needed to do. So may I go on from here, or do you want? I didn't realize that Uriel was in the car. I literally forgot it for a long period of time. I did know that I had made plans with Aiden, which is my oldest grandson, to take him to Walmart in Sebring to look for some Christmas ideas for him, and then I was going to take him to dinner and have him back early because it was a school night. He was about 4:15 or so. He was feeding the pigs back behind the barn, and I got in the car and I pulled up to the barn, and Nay came with his lawnmower around so that my driver door and where he was sitting in the lawnmower, I just opened up my driver door and we could talk. And we were just chatting about I don't even know what. And I said, when did Kayla come for Uriel? And he just looked at me. He said, I've been outside, I don't know. And then I said, when did Kayla come for Uriel? And it began to dawn on me. And then I opened the door and realized that she was in there all along. I could tell that she had passed when I looked in the car. And I ran back behind the barn to the west side of the barn. I looked for anything I could find to hurt myself. I wanted to be gone. I did not want to have to deal, I didn't want to have to look at Kayla and Drew and tell them that this had happened. I wanted to be gone. But there was nothing there. And there was not any way that anything that I could find that would do that. So I fell on my face, and I asked God just to take me. I said, you know, I'm done. I'm done. I need you to just take me. And he wouldn't.
How do you feel about what happened?
I'm broken about what happened. I don't want to leave anyone with the thought that I'm making excuses, because I'm not. I was forthcoming with the detective. I asked to be taken to the sheriff's department. The video that you saw at the trial was during that time of me being in the sheriff's one of the interrogation rooms. When the detective came in, she asked me if I felt like giving a statement or talking about what happened. And without a lawyer, I told her everything I knew. I was not trying to hide anything. I didn't want to be there, and I didn't want to live at that moment, but I wasn't trying to hide anything. It ended up that I did go to Peace River, and I did it by choice, not because I was forced to do that. I didn't know what I was going to do to myself. I didn't get there until late or early morning, late night or early morning, and of course there was no sleeping that night. And Kayla, you said that you had heard my voice. I don't even remember coming out of the bedroom or the room that I was in the next day. I'm sure that you're telling the truth on that. I just simply don't remember leaving the room. Usually that's a 72-hour hold. I stayed 2 weeks. And I stayed 2 weeks because I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know how I could possibly handle looking at Kayla and Drew ever again, or Joanne and Greg ever again, or Nay. You know, I love my grandbabies. Joanne and Greg love their grandbabies. Nay loves his grandbabies. And I just simply did not know what else to do but just go there and try to keep my head on my shoulders. So every day, the next day after I got there, I told you I got there late night, early morning, and so they had me go to bed, which was ridiculous. But the next day I saw the psychiatrist, and that is what I think it was Dr. Estevez described, that he immediately took me off of my medicines. He said that the medicine, that the Ambien, they had me on, just so you know, and I'm going to take a small step back. Drew, I don't know if you remember you coming into your house the day that I was sitting at your house. Kayla had asked me to come over, and I was sitting at your house, and I just was watching her at the house. And you came in maybe around 12:30 or 1 o'clock. And I got her settled, and I walked over to you, and I said, we haven't talked about Ezra. And I don't want to talk to you until you feel ready to talk. And when you feel ready to talk, please let me know, and I'll tell you anything you want to know. And then Kayla got up from her nap, and she came out, and I said the same thing to you. I said, I told Drew what I just said, and I don't know that you're ready to hear it yet.
Officer Martin told me that there were no charges for Ezra that day. That's why he came home. That's why I went to my room. I told you that.
You were taking a nap that day because you had asked me to come by and just sit with her that day. And when you came out, I said to you, you know, I spoke to Drew, and I told him that whenever you guys were ready to talk about Ezra, that I would do that. And I never heard back from either of you. So I wasn't avoiding talking with you. I was waiting on you to tell me you were ready to talk.
And that's when
Okay. And I've kind of lost where I was. That was the last thing I said before I went off on that. Can they read it back to me so that I know what the last thing?
This is a ECR, electronic recording. We don't have live court reporting.
Okay.
You have to rely on what you discussed, or your lawyer can redirect you.
All right.
Now she's
I
playing
really
the memory
do forget
thing.
where I was.
Like to tell Kayla or Trisha.
Not that hard. You were just talking about
I think
the
that you
bed.
have the impression that I have not grieved and that I have not
yes.
cared about your children. Drew, I particularly picked that up from you, and that could not be farther from the truth. After she was gone, I stayed in bed for what felt like weeks. I didn't eat. I didn't care if I ate. I didn't take care of my physical being. I didn't want to go outside. I would tell Nate over and over, I know that you want to fix something for dinner, but I just don't care. I just don't care. And I was like that a long time until finally I decided I had to do something about it. And the courts were good enough to allow me to go to Blackberry.
How long were you there?
Blackberry was an alcohol, drug, and trauma center, and I was there for trauma, and I was there 7 weeks. So I spent 2 weeks at Peace River and 7 weeks at Blackberry. It did help because I saw a psychiatrist every day, a psychologist, or a therapist. I saw one of the two of them every day. My fear in just going straight into some sort of counseling was that if I ever opened that box and then didn't see somebody for another week, I would never have been able to handle that. But after 7 weeks of intensive attention and therapy, when I got home, I began therapy every Friday until actually the Friday before trial. So for almost 2 years, trying to wrap my head around it, trying to.
Has that helped you?
It has helped me.
So you're able to sit here today and at least somewhat talk about it without.
What I find is when I'm asked to talk about it, I can do that with my head now. But the second I begin to talk about Kayla or about Yuri or Ezra, I just, that's the trigger, and I just fall apart because I love them so much. And I want to just go on and make another comment that Drew said, that you hadn't even received an apology from me. You had not received an apology because I wasn't allowed to talk to you. I wasn't allowed to be close to you. But let me tell you something. I would give anything, including my life, if Uriel or Ezra or both of them could be here, and I mean that. I would give my life if they could be here. But that is not how God wanted that to be. And I can't explain it beyond that. But that's not how God wanted it to be. So I've got to figure out how to live. You know, I've got to figure out how to not hurt myself. I woke up even just 2 weeks ago. Now, this has been 2 years and 4 months ago, and 3 years and 5 months, 3 months ago for Ezra. But I woke up 2 weeks ago out of a dead sleep in the middle of the night. And the first thing, I sat up, and the first thing on my mind was, what can I do to hurt myself? What can I do to get out of this? What can I do? And I thought of all these different ways that I could hurt myself or die. I wanted to die because I would never hurt your babies on purpose. You've got to know that. You've got to know that. I just would never hurt them on purpose. I loved your babies. With all of my heart, I loved your babies. So if I have to apologize, I mean, if I have the opportunity to say I'm sorry is so menial and insignificant. But maybe if I told you that I would literally lay my life down for them,
You still say it.
maybe that would make the I'm sorry more meaningful. I would do that if it would bring them back. You've got to know that. And I am desperately, desperately sorry for the pain that you've endured, for the loss, Joanne and Greg, of your grandbabies, for Nay. You know, Nay has stepped up and he's done all the dirty work. He's done everything. And he's done it with grace and with strength. And he's not going to get to see his grandbabies either. I don't know what else to say. I could probably babble on, but the important thing is that you know that I wouldn't hurt your babies. I just wouldn't. I think I did leave a part out when we were talking about the car and the baby and Caleb Shock put the car seat back behind my seat. I think I did say that though. That
You couldn't see her.
and I couldn't see them. Yes, I did say that. Okay.
I hear about Ezra. I hear about you. You saw the court order indicating finding was that you were asleep at the time Ezra passed and Nay had left. But you still feel guilty about it.
Oh yeah, yes, I do. As soon as there were toys in the floor. We were talking about Ezra. There were toys in the floor, all over the floor, and every toy this day and time makes a noise of some sort. And Nay had, Ezra and I had a pattern. When he was at the house, I have a red chair. And I would sit in the red chair, and about, 10 o'clock or so, he'd climb up, and I would rock him to sleep. And he would take a nap. And this particular day, he climbed up in the seat without me. And Nay, when I walked in the room, Nay was standing behind him, and he was rocking the chair. Because he never gets to do that. That's always my joy, to do that. And so Nay was standing behind him and rocking the chair, and he fell asleep in the chair. And instead of picking him up and putting him in my lap, I let him sleep there, because that was important to Nay, that he had put him to sleep. So I sat on the corner of the couch with only an end table in between us. We weren't 3 feet apart from one another. And I leaned my feet back, I laid the chair back, and I dozed off. I did. And he was asleep, and I was asleep. And Nay ended up leaving to go to Walmart. I woke up, I didn't go in a real deep sleep, but I don't know how Ezra made it through the living room without hitting a toy, because there were so many. And so when I opened my eyes, he wasn't in the chair. So I sprinted literally around the house, and I got in the car, and I went down the driveway, and I turned to the left and went to the stop sign, and I turned to the right and went down a small distance, knowing that his little legs wouldn't take him that far. And when I came back from going west, I cut across the pasture, because I saw something that looked like a little volleyball or something in the water. And I just cut straight across the pasture. I got out of the car before I even put on the brakes, and I scampered over. I hurried over to to the pond, and I got him out, and I began doing CPR on him, and I screamed for the neighbor, and the neighbor called 911, and we were doing all that we could do. The only thing that we can figure is it was Christmas time, and we had white reindeer, and maybe he was enamored by the reindeer, and then the reindeer were probably 15 feet or so from the pond, and there were ducks in the pond, and that's the best that we can figure as to what brought him there.
And you don't know how you don't know
The
how
ducks.
I don't know how he got out.
This is the first child that passed away, drowned.
I was not aware he could open the door. He had started walking a few, handful of weeks before that, but I had never seen him reach for it's a lever handle, and I'd never seen him reach for the handle.
Discuss this at length in that prior hearing.
Yes, we have.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to say to the court, to the family?
Your Honor, whatever your decision is, I want you to know that I'm already in prison. No one can do more to themselves than I have done to myself. I wake up every day and I think about it. I go to bed every night and I think about it. And I will do that until I draw my last breath. So you may feel like you need to do something more, and I will understand that. But I do want you to know that I'm in my own prison, and it will last all of my life.
State. I just have one question, Your Honor.
State.
And I'm sorry, ma'am, I'm a bit confused. You said many things. One of them was you don't want to make excuses, and then you listed off a bunch of things such as medication and cable shock, putting the seat in the wrong spot. I just want to know from you, why isn't Yuri here with us today?
First of all, I'm not making excuses. Those were
So answer
factual
the question.
events.
She's still doing it.
And Yuri is not here because I left her in the car.
Okay, question, Charlie.
All right, anything, may she sit down, defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Nix. Defense, all right.
They rest.
Defense, make your argument once your client gets to your table after you confer with her briefly, please.
Your Honor, where would you like me?
Wherever you like. You can use the podium, either one.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think everybody here has figured out there's no winners here. Everybody involved in this case, Tracey, May, Drew, and Caleb Shock suffered tremendous losses. Brings tears to the lawyers, brings tears to the people here. Uriel's family has gone through living hell, apparently for several years. I understand that these people love their child. Pretty obvious. It's a parent's worst nightmare, Judge. I don't know if Your Honor has kids, but if you do, I'm sure it would be your worst nightmare.
Got 2 kids and 2 grandchildren, 1 and 3.
I didn't want to get personal with the court.
It's fine. It's well-known, documented knowledge.
Yes, sir. What's my worst nightmare? When my child was young. His family also includes Nay and Tracey Nix. Whether you lose a child or whether you lose a grandchild, pain's horrible. It's horrible for everybody in this case. I don't know how they've handled it, Judge. I don't know how any of them have been able to handle it. I've seen, I don't know if Your Honor has kids, but if you do, I'm sure it would be your worst nightmare. Got 2 kids and 2 grandchildren, 1 and 3. I didn't want to get personal with the court. It's fine. It's well-known, documented knowledge. Yes, sir.
All right. Defense, make your argument once your client gets to your table after you confer with her briefly, please.
anger and rage by the shocks, not so much today, just the pain that they've suffered. There's some things that were stated in the PSI and a letter by Kayla that I was going to point out, but I'm not going to do that. I think it's insignificant now.
And for the record, I reviewed all the letters. I've reviewed your motion for mitigation. I reviewed all the PSI documents well ahead of time.
And I do want to say one thing. There wasn't any car seat, whatever you call that, the reminder in the back of the Lexus. I don't think Tracey has lied to anybody about this. I think she's been completely honest, forthcoming. That's certainly a reason to mitigate. Although we know where we are, we're sitting there at 44 points, which allows you to give anything from probation up to 5 years. I do want to go on something the court will allow me to. We're not here about Ezra. I did hear both of the parents talk about Ezra, and they should talk about Ezra because I'm sure they don't want him forgotten. But I guess also for the media, Judge, a couple things I'd like to read, if you please, Your Honor.
Okay.
From the order granting defendant's motion in limine excluding certain evidence. This was fully fleshed out. The state presented all the evidence that they had regarding the death of Ezra. The defense presented their testimony. Just a couple things here, Judge. Findings of fact in that case. Neither defendant nor Ezra's mother believed Ezra capable of opening doors at the home. Defendant's husband had seen Ezra unsuccessfully try to open double doors at the home on one occasion. The death of Ezra Shock, while a tragedy, was the result of simple negligence, not rising to the level of culpable or gross negligence. The alleged acts of negligence were being unaware the child had the ability to escape the home and failing to properly supervise him. There's insufficient evidence to conclude that the defendant was awake when her husband left. Therefore, defendant cannot be the person who is responsible for the act of negligence. So I know these, and I understand that Tracey and they were both there. Tracey's caught pretty much of the blame from the family. But again, when you look at all the evidence, the proof, then I think it shows that she wasn't responsible. If it please Your Honor, indulge me. Your order also states, here the state merely suspects that defendant was awake when her husband left, making her the person responsible for the care of Ezra and thus the person who committed the alleged collateral act. This is despite testimonial evidence from her husband to the contrary, that she was asleep and he tiptoed out. This is consistent with video from Detective Ward's body-worn camera taken immediately after the incident, where the defendant, who was still under the emotional influence of the incident, says she was asleep when her husband left, State's Exhibit 9. Defendant's subsequent interview with Detective Hart on December 30th apparently was not recorded and is confusing as to when she says she fell asleep. The confusion continues within the affidavit complaint filed by Detective Hart, which states Tracey said that Ezra had fallen asleep in a chair. Her husband, Nix, left to run errands. When she woke up, Ezra was missing. May Nix's proffered testimony reveals he decided to go shopping and discussed it with the defendant. After both Ezra and the defendant fell asleep, he recalled tiptoeing out of the room. Later, he received a call from the defendant asking him if he had taken Ezra, and when he answered no, she immediately hung up the call. He also recalled he had previously seen Ezra try and fail to open a door in the home. Now, I say this, and
Throw them under the
appreciate the
bus.
court allowing me to bring this up again. We're not here about that, but I want the family of this young victim to realize that when you look at the evidence, Tracey was not at fault. And I want the media to know this also.
It's not her fault.
You said you'd seen the letters, I'd underlined some things. I might incur the court's wrath if I repeated that. There were a lot of letters in support. Obviously, the court knows she's a good person. She did a lot in this community for over 40 years. She served this community both as a teacher and as a principal, and as a Sunday school teacher and an active member of her church. Obviously, the court knows she has no prior criminal record. The jury had found there was no culpable negligence here. Your Honor, in previous ruling, found that count 2 is strict liability. I never even argued count 2 in closing argument. There was nothing to argue. Obviously, we disagree, and reasonable people can disagree with respect to count 2 and whether there needs to be any type of intent there, but we'll save that for another day. I'll also say that Tracey is a wonderful person. This tragedy occurred, and we're not blaming anybody except when you're on medication, a medication like that, and we presented from a very, I say, renowned expert concerning the medication that she was on for a number of years was totally inappropriate. The Ambien was more than twice the dosage she should have been on, combined with the other medication. I'm surprised she did as well as she did on this medication.
She did.
Again, she and the whole family, both Tracey Nix and the family, have suffered tremendously. She's always going to be haunted. The thought of suicide, and I can understand that, and I know you have grandkids, I have grandkids. Doing something to them would be not only doing it to them, but doing it to your child too. I don't know how Tracey has been able to live with this other than the constant counseling that she's had. I'm going to ask the court to be fair, ask the court to use wisdom. This is very emotional. When the lawyer gets tears in his eyes, you know it's an emotional case. You're sitting at 44 points. I'm asking the court to look at all the facts, look at what Dr. Estevez said about the 5 reasons for punishment. And I'm going to ask the court to give her some jail time, some county jail time. If you think she needs probation, put her on probation, but whatever terms and conditions that you think appropriate. I know she's going to want to see her grandkids who her parents will allow her to see. And as Tracey said, we're leaving it in your hands, and I'll trust that you'll be fair.
Okay, okay.
All right, Ms. Nix, rise and come to the podium.
Is he gonna do it right now? No break? That's good. I didn't think it was gonna take this long. We've been here for, it's 2 hours. 2.5 hours.
Come over with your attorney here.
So it's 3. But sentencing time.
I sat in this trial. I picked up this case. I started down here July 1. I picked up this case. And I did the motion for motion in limine. And I know exactly what I wrote and what I ruled. You can't use other crimes or acts to show bad character or propensity. There has to be clear and convincing. But it doesn't negate the fact, just because I didn't use that event, it occurred. And it was with 2 people there. It was with Mr. Nix and Mrs. Nix. And when I hear today situations and testimony about where the seat was put in the driver's side because Kaylee Nix did it, not Mrs. Nix, Miss Tracey Nix, the defendant, did it, that's inconsistent with the deposition testimony that Kaylee Nix said, and it's also inconsistent with what she wrote in her victim impact statement. Then I listened to her testimony about the juror was sleepy and gave a bottle and immediately fell asleep.
Yeah.
And there's a video, and I don't recall seeing that. But I also recall in the trial, they talked about giving the baby a straw and some water in a straw, and that this was a situation where their baby didn't have food and milk. And I went through, and I'm going to come down to this in a minute, but the evidence that comes in, I wasn't there, you weren't there, the only people that were there were Miss Nix, and at the time, we get evidence after the fact, and when we're sitting in the room and we're watching it, it comes in. Like, here's the back seat of the car, evidence 41 that came in. Here's the front seat of the vehicle, 40, where there's wipes and things in a car. And when people go places with kids, they leave objects, thread on the steering wheel, things in the front seat to remind them where they had a child. And I'm not talking about a child that was there, you had an hour-long, 2-hour-long drive. I'm talking a 7 to 9 minute drive. Here's the exhibit 29. It's the back seat of the car. There's evidence everywhere. Then we see the picture of when Nay and them got there. That's evidence 23. I then have a half-empty thing, a bottle, evidence 35. So I see all of that, and I see all the reminders. And then I remember Kaylee Nix saying that the Lexus, the red Lexus, was equipped with a red rear occupant alert to alert an adult to a child in the back seat. And I know that these cars, Fords, Lexuses, everything has so much weight in the back seat, beep beeps go off. And I hear her saying I didn't have that. But then I read the deposition taken of Kaylee Nix, docket entry 201, October 1, 24. Do you know who put the car seat, page 32, line 5 to 7? Do you know who put the car seat into the car that day she picked up Uriel up at the glass shop? I do not. I do know it was her tendency to put the car seat in herself. Okay, Kaylee answered. She typically, whether I was standing there or not, would pick her up and set her in there. And then I would typically help reach over and strap her in. But a car has sensors, weight sensors. So that, just like my vehicle, whenever I stop and put it in park and turn it off, there's a loud ding that says, check your back seat if there's weight in the seat. And so those are things that I'm aware of that were in a vehicle. So when she put her in there, I did not imagine that I had any other staff assist her in the moment putting her car seat. Did she normally put the car seat behind the passenger or driver's seat? I have her telling me it was in the driver's seat because Kaylee did it, and I have Kaylee saying that it was typically in the driver's seat. And then I have these tendencies and these things that I see that show that there's a baby in the car. And let's not forget that we just left Beefville Brady's. This child was the apple of everyone's eye there. I've been to the Beefville Brady's. I've had lunch there. There's a lengthy video. There's a video of the car in the parking lot. At the end of the day, Kaylee Shock presented this evidence to me through her testimony, her victim impact statement, and her the deposition. The defense has presented to me the witnesses and the evidence. What I know for a fact is Tracey Nix left Euro in the car at 2 p.m. for over 3 hours. At no time during the 10,800 seconds that elapsed did she think 1 second about her granddaughter. Uriel Shock was there for 2.5 hours with her that day. And she just saw her 7 to 9 minutes before, and then she goes to the residence 7 to 9 minutes away. This child, like I said earlier, was the apple of everybody's eye. It captivated, entertained the patrons and the people at Beef O'Brady's, much like a 7-month-old does, a year-old does, a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old does. You know what you're doing with them, and in 7 to 9 minutes, by golly, you know where that child is. And anything to the contrary, and any excuse to the contrary, is just that. I heard and saw the body cam footage along with the interrogation room video of Tracey Nix immediately discovering what happened after she has a grandchild passed away. She was distraught. I don't believe there's a lot of remorse in that about her grandchild's suffering and death. Rather, I see her more concerned with her community image and the death of the child. I want to leave. I want to go away. I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. And I hear today the evidence and the testimony, and I get a little more remorse on that, but is it truly remorse?
Yes.
Tracey Nix, throughout these proceedings, has contended these acts were involuntary. She couldn't form the requisite intent to commit a crime. Her narrative is that she forgot because of senility or by taking her prescribed mind-altering medications. There's no credible evidence to the court that's persuaded this court to mitigate her sentence as the attorneys have requested. This defendant, like many other defendants facing prison sanctions before, is trying to avoid or lessen a prison sentence once arrested and after a jury finds them guilty. They justify what happened rather than accepting blame and truly evidencing remorse.
I have practiced law for 30 years. I've sat on this bench for over 3.5 years. I've met my share of people in the Florida state prison system, the federal system, and I understand that they minimize their conduct and they also don't accept responsibility. And that's how it is. And there's a pile of them down at Hardy Correctional that'll tell you the same stories that I heard here today. The ultimate determination of when we do a case, and I excluded the evidence of the experts on the defense side. It's when you look at whether a defendant is competent to proceed, it's my determination in state court, in a trial court. Under the Dougherty v. State case, 149 Southern 3rd, 672 at 678, the trial court is not bound by the reports or opinion of experts. The defense in this case never afforded nor volunteered Tracey Nix to the state of Florida to have her evaluated by its own experts, so the state of Florida, the citizens of Florida, were denied the right to contest the evaluation and procedures and conclusions of the Tracey Nix retained, hired experts. They all say we're here for our time. They don't come, they come in here, they get paid, they give their opinion. They give their opinion. If it's valid for the defense, they testify. If it's not valid for the defense, they don't testify. I heard this man's testimony. In a competency or an insanity case, the state has the right to contest the evaluation procedures and conclusions of the court-appointed experts. Had she alleged incompetence or not guilty by reason of insanity, the state of Florida and all the citizens would have the ability, the state would have had the ability to hire its own experts to evaluate her mental and physical claims. The state was not afforded that here. And that's why we have a 35-year-old law that says you can't bring in diminished capacity. I ruled on that. I'm not going to revisit that ruling. The state, as a representative body for the citizens of Florida, has a right to a fair determination and meaningful opportunity to be heard to conduct its own review of Tracey Nix. All of her defense experts were hired for their time and to defend her. They had unbridled access to her so they could present their opinions to the court. What I noticed was there was no, what did the MRI findings say? I don't know. I wasn't given that. There are many tests that mental health experts can perform and routinely do perform on criminal defendants to determine if a criminal defendant is falsifying or exaggerating facts or symptoms. There's called malingering. There's no medical records nor testimony presented to this court that she suffers from Alzheimer's, dementia, or senility November 1 of 2022. None of the defense experts have testified they tested Tracey Nix for malingering or confabulation. They simply say, trust us, we are experts. The court declines to do that. In Florida, the term for imprisonment for a second-degree felony is up to 15 years in prison. First degree is up to 30 years. Life is up to a defendant's life. And in a capital case, I can sentence somebody to death if the aggravating factors exceed the mitigating factors. In this case, Tracey Nix has been found guilty of a third-degree felony, punishable by a maximum of 5 years in Florida State Prison.
5 years.
On January 15, 2025, a jury found the defendant guilty of one count of leaving a child in a motor vehicle in excess of 15 minutes, causing great bodily harm, but in reality causing death, and not guilty of one count of aggravated manslaughter. I've already gone over what I talked about with the Rule 3.704D9 about the victim injury points. Her score sheet is 44 points. Under Florida law, the maximum sentence I can impose for Tracey Nix is 60 months or 5 years in Florida State Prison. For me, as a trial court, to impose a departure sentence, it's a two-step process under Banks v. State. 732 Southern 2nd, 1065, 1067. First, I must determine whether I can depart. That is, whether a legal basis exists for the departure sentence that has been established by a preponderance of the evidence. Two, even if a valid and supported legal ground exists to permit a departure sentence, the trial court must still determine whether it should depart and whether a departure sentence is the best sentencing option in a given case. Two facts the defense argued in their motion to mitigate. 9, that Tracey cooperated with the state of Florida to resolve the offenses she was charged with on November 1, 2022. The court finds that not to be the case here. Tracey Nix did not cooperate. There's no competent substantial evidence that the crime she was charged with was resolved as a result of her cooperation. To the contrary, she investigated it, she went to trial, she didn't enter a plea to count 2, and she didn't cooperate with law enforcement or the state prosecutor. The second ground they sought mitigation is 10, which is an unsophisticated, isolated incident. There's 3 elements that must be proven by the defendant when you raise that mitigation, not 1 or 2. Number 1, Tracey Nix has to prove to the court that the offense was committed in an unsophisticated manner. Number 2, it was an isolated incident and she has shown remorse. All 3 elements have to be proved. You can't prove 1 or 2, all 3. Tracey Nix and her husband had the 17-month Ezra at their home who died 11 months earlier. That is a fact. That came in every hearing I've been in, and I've heard it today as well. The grandchild Uriel shock tragedy is not an isolated incident. This is the second. The court
time.
watched and heard her interview. I do not believe she's showing remorse. I believe she's showing sorrow. It is impossible for a defendant who refuses to accept responsibility for an offense to show remorse for that offense. Sympathy is not the same as remorse. Sorrow is not the same as remorse. When I look at in the Florida statutes, when I deal with sentencing under 921.02, subsection 1B, the criminal punishment code's primary purpose is to punish an offender. Rehabilitation is subordinate to the goal of punishment. Subsection C, penalty imposed shall be commensurate with the severity of the primary offense and the circumstances surrounding the primary offense. The court does not find that the defendant's sentencing proposal is the best sentencing option. Rather, Tracey Nix should spend the next 60 months in Florida State Prison with credit for time served. The trial court is guided by the code, the sentencing guidelines, and the express purpose for criminal sanctions under Florida law, and a Florida State Prison sentence of 60 minutes is the best sentencing option. The court also finds that she knew how she was feeling on November 1. The multiple videos, some with audios that day, and the testimony of her Bible study and many friends unequivocally established her awareness that day she is not competent, nor is she insane. She caused Uriel shock to suffer an agonizing, prolonged death that was avoidable. The court saw all the evidence in the photos. I want to note the diaper bag that was brought into evidence, Exhibit 36, Exhibit 37, Exhibit 38, Exhibit 39 was the most organized diaper bag I've ever seen in my life. And I heard testimony that the child didn't have food, this, that, and the other thing in the beef O'Brady's, and they fed her through a straw. I note that it was an excellent diaper bag. The bottles, food, medicine, and the items were all in quart bags, Ziploc bags. For witnesses to say or allude that Uriel had no milk, formula, food is hypocritical and untrue.
That's
the court
crazy.
finds such testimony by any such witnesses not credible for sentencing purposes. The defense's recitation of their mitigating factors without confirmation by any unbiased expert, in addition to the deficiencies the court found earlier, also fails to establish by a preponderance of the evidence any mitigation that is to be considered by the court today, nor do they amount to competent, substantial evidence for this or any court to justify a sentence of less than 5 years in Florida State Prison. The defendant restrained Uriel shock in a car seat, and the child was severely injured before she died. There were plenty of signs to Tracey Nix that she had a baby in her car that day and she was responsible to protect it. She failed in her protection of Uriel. I will not fail this state or this community in my duties as a judge to fashion a sentence that I feel is appropriate for these type of charges. You can call it whichever one of the 5 points you call it, but I'm calling it a just and determinate sentence based upon the facts and evidence that I have seen here and heard here and presented today. The court hereby sentences Tracey Nix to Florida State Prison for a term of 5 years of Florida or 60 months with credit for all time served. A $5,000 fine shall be reduced to a judgment lien. The cost of prosecution and restitution will be reserved for 60 days. Y'all can agree on it or we'll have another hearing. She will be remanded under the supervision of the Department of Correction until her term of prison ends. Now I'm going to speak to this community. I'm not from here. I'm from Winter Haven, Polk County. This community needs to move past this case and leave Kayla and Drew Shock alone. Let them and their 2 children live in peace. This family has lost 2 children, Ezra Shock and Uriel Shock. The tragedy of this case is undeniable. A baby's life is over way too soon and a family has been severely impacted in unimaginable ways. Whenever a child dies, this entire community suffers. This community needs to move forward and start the healing process. I have made a final and determination here. I'm not putting people on probation to be walking around this community to rehash an issue or something to come up. I have sentenced her to 5 years in Florida State Prison. I want this community to move forward. The legislature defined this felony crime. A fair and impartial jury found Tracey Nix guilty, and I, as a circuit judge for Hardy County, have sentenced her accordingly. Ms. Nix, you have 30 days to appeal the judgment and conviction of this court. If you cannot afford an attorney, one can be appointed for you without cost for appellate purposes. The state, do you have anything further I need to deal with?
Your Honor, to head off an issue, we'll waive cost of prosecution, so we don't have to have a hearing.
Okay. Do you want to reserve on restitution? If you don't, you can reserve it, and then you can either agree, disagree, or say, Judge, we're not having it, it'll go away on its own.
Your Honor, we can reserve it, and it'll probably go away on its own.
Okay. Mr. Fletcher, anything further we need to go on?
One thing I have to say as her attorney, May Nix today, and I think, I don't know if she's still here, Alex Amanda Fletcher testified there wasn't any car.
I understand.
Okay, because you said that, I thought you said there was.
You're talking about the car seat?
Obviously, we disagree about the remorse. I'm not going to argue with that. We also have a motion for supersedious bond.
You're absolutely correct. Once you file your notice of appeal, the supersedious bond statute will go into effect. You'll then have a hearing on your motion. But the first event that has to happen is the notice of appeal. Once that's happened, send it to my JA for your information. Ursula Nathy is my current JA. Next week, my new JA will be Julie Cochran. Her email address will be circulated on the website. It'll be J. Cochran. So file your notice of appeal. You can either reiterate the motion you've already done on supersedious bond or file a new one, and then I'll set a hearing time that's commensurate with both of y'all's calendars. Mr. Coleman and my JA will work with you on that, okay? And if you're not going to handle the appeal and you got a public defender, please get your paperwork in sooner rather than later.
We have an attorney.
Thank you.
Court's adjourned.
Okay.
All right.
And I'm adjudicating her guilty, okay? For the record.
Okay. So court's adjourned, and I'm actually pretty sleepy. I was supposed to, but this is a really weird story. And the reason that this lady was only given 5 years, which really now it's going to be 2.5 years left because time served, she was already there for 2.5 or something like that, is because the jury found her not guilty for aggravated manslaughter. They didn't find her guilty. I didn't watch this trial, so I don't know why. They went for an aggravated manslaughter charge. They didn't find her guilty of that, but she was convicted of leaving a child unattended in a vehicle, causing great bodily harm. Apparently, I saw different things in different articles. One said 8 years max. The other one, there's another one here that says 6 years max, but apparently it seems like it's 5 years. 5 years max. And so he gave her the max that he could, I guess, with the law. And that's just accounting for one child, even though 2 children died under her care. You know, who can say that? Who I don't know. I can't imagine what that must feel like. It's got to be such a horrible, I just can't even I don't know. And then to be left in the care of another child. And again, the first child drowned in her care. They supposedly walked into the pool. And then the second one, she forgot and left Uriel in the car for at 2.5 hours, almost 3 hours. I don't know. And the baby was dead. 2 kids, and it's your mother. I can't imagine, how do you even process that? You process that your 2 kids are dead, and it was because they were in the care of your mother. And it's like the judge said, I just really feel like I just heard a bunch of excuses, and it's the medication, it's the placement of the seed, and in the mother placed the seed over here, and the husband left to go to wherever store he went, and with all the toys that was in the room, I'm surprised he didn't kick the toys, almost implying that had he kicked the toy or ran into something, maybe she would have woken up and checked on the child. And then accusations of the child was I don't know what they said, eating through a straw or something. And then the way the judge said the child was placed in the seat, the child was even hurt before the child passed away. I don't know how he said it, how he worded it. And it's a weird thing because, some people felt sympathy for grandma. And then some people were saying, don't judge. Right? And so some people were saying, don't judge the parents. But you could almost kind of apply that to grandma then, because grandma's a parent too, I guess. You're going to put out past judgment on her? I don't know. It's a really effed up, messed up story. Really sad. And then grandma messing around in jail, hooking up with women and stuff. I don't know what the deal with that is. Maybe you could say she's coping or adjusting. Does the husband know that she's been swinging in prison, and her having him send money there? It's a mess. It's a mess. And I mentioned this story a long time ago. I'm kind of glad we got to touch back up on it. That's the reason I was this morning I was scrolling and I saw this and I was like, let's just put an end to this sad chapter of these babies.
She found the baby dead in the scorching vehicle.
And I'm having deja vu right when I'm pulling up because I'm seeing the exact same scene that I seen when I pulled up with Ezra. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I never in a million years would have thought again.
They told me that my baby was dead.
Did you just go into complete shock? I mean, the pain must have been unbearable.
Absolutely. I absolutely remember
Kayla
fully putting my phone down and screaming.
Now, grandmother Tracey Nix has been arrested, charged with aggravated manslaughter in the death of baby Yuri. Kayla has not spoken to her mom since the day her second baby died.
To know that ultimately the person that brought me into the world is the person that destroyed his world, my son. That's just unbearable.
Attorneys for Tracey Nix say she is devastated by the loss of her grandchildren.
You always hear people getting struck by lightning twice, people that win the lottery even twice. I mean, here you have the lottery of tragedy, and it's hit twice.
The lottery of tragedy, bro. Dude, the lottery of tragedy.
It's one of the most
the lightning strike of tragedy.
Unfortunate things I've ever heard of, and our heart absolutely, goes out to that family.
On social media, the tragedy is sparking lots of questions. Why on earth would parents leave another child in her care?
Of course we're aware of the comments being said. Of course I have read really difficult things. And we're human. We feel that.
The grieving parents say they want justice, even if it means sending grandmom to jail.
Damn, got grandma locked up. What a story, man. What a story. Sad story, too. So grandma's going to do an additional 2.5 years, I guess. I don't know if she's going to try to appeal. I mean, even so much so, and that's the thing, like the judge saw, I feel like the judge probably would have given her more time if he could have, or if the jury found her guilty of manslaughter, But even so much so to even say, talking about the first death, that there was ducks in the water. And so that's why the first child, what was the first child's name again? Ezra. That's must have been why, it's just like, damn, like just show true, like empathy and apologize and all this stuff. But it's like 100 of excuses for everything. Just too much. Everything's a fucking excuse. It's just like, come on, man. Nobody want to hear that shit. Just own up to it. I mean, I it was good for her to take the stand because a lot of these people won't do it. I forgot which trial I saw where the person didn't take this. The one person did, the other person didn't. The judge was more lenient than the person that took the stand. But I think it was those crazy. Was it Ruby Frankie, one of those crazy psycho bitches that killed her kid? What happened to Ruby Frankie again? She's another one sleeping with women. I think she was sleeping with that lady. The lady had supposedly, I don't know what that lady did to her. Abused, convicted of child abuse. Yeah. A parenting channel over there abusing the kids, locked up in the basement and shit in Utah. And they over there giving parents tips and shit. Ruby Frankie. Crazy. Sick. JD. Yeah, she can't be around any kids, man. She cannot. Once she gets out, if she takes care of herself, I mean, she probably needs to be careful in jail because I don't know if people know what she did, but she's 67. She'll get out in 2.5 years, 67, 68, 69, maybe 70. She can still live her life. She might have to move out of that town, but she can kind of still live her life. I wonder if her daughter is going to talk to her. That's a really tough, painful, crazy situation. So yeah, that's that, man. I didn't expect to be here that long this morning, but hey, we're here. What I want to do today, I'm gonna have to get off. I need to do a little bit of cleaning. Mother's supposed to come over later, and I got to pick up Maddie too in a while, and I want to knock out homework really quick with her early, and I want to do a little bit of Last of Us. The new Last of Us is coming out today. I pre-downloaded it, paid for it. I know there's not a huge audience for it, but the new one came out, so I want to play that. We'll see how much of that I can do today. And yeah, and Call of Duty's coming out too, whatever. But so we'll see what other stories. There's another story too that I want to talk about. I want to see how I squeeze that in. Again, that's the other story I want to talk about should be for another live stream. I don't want to throw it in with this. We've already been here for so long. It's a whole different topic, but I don't know if it's really interesting. It's another messed up story I see a lot of people talking about. So we'll see what we can squeeze in today. There's some short stories too. Some short stories going on that I could probably talk about. And then there's all that tornadoes, the bad weather in Tennessee and some of those states. Really bad. Yesterday was one of the worst tornado outbreaks in U.S. history, according to Todd. So you just take a little preview of this. A lot of devastation. I don't know if there's deaths or how many. Remember that grandpa that dropped his granddaughter out the window on a cruise? No, I don't remember that. Was there a story like that? Prison sex is not satisfying at age 67. Only 2 years, first time, or 15%. I remember there was that story of this father that left his kid in a car and she died. The father, I think it was in Las Vegas. We had covered that back then. I don't know if he was found not guilty or not. That's never happened to me. Like, forget my daughter, but I've heard of stories. I've heard of parents. Maybe your mind goes into like automation, and like people maybe forget their kids. But I would think like at some point it kicks in. Oh shit, my kid's not with me. Whether I've heard a story. You taking your kid to the daycare. There was a story that somebody had said like I thought they said they went to the daycare and they thought they dropped off their kid, and they never did. And the kid was in the car or some shit. Child dies. Her father reportedly thought he had dropped off her at daycare. Parents speak out following the death of a baby after she was left in a hot car all day. I don't know how you do that. You drive to the daycare in your mind robotically. I don't know. You sit there or what, and then you just leave her in the car. I don't get that. I understand, like, maybe you walk away for a few seconds. You're like, oh, shit, or a few minutes. Maybe, possible. People got a bunch of things in their mind. Maybe people on medication, all kinds of pills and shit, or if you're high or something, but I just can't imagine having that type of situation. A kid's dead. 2 kids at that now. And people feeling sorry. Well, how many kids is it going to take to die for you to be like, you know what? She should be locked up and held accountable. How many kids got to die for this shit? It's crazy. Arizona. Oh, it was Arizona? Oh, Schulte's case. Oh. I think there's been multiple stories. There's been multiple stories. She did get time served, Kim. Yes, she did. She got time served. I guess people just have to try to be really, really aware. I've heard of little stories, but there's times where it's just okay. They find out, but after a few minutes or something. But to leave somebody for completely forget and they're hurt, injured, and like the father said, the weather in certain places is really hot. Over here, it gets hot and humid. People take that shit serious. Even the dogs. People leave dogs in the car and stuff like that. People take that serious. They'll call the cops. They'll break a window. I've seen people sometimes break a window for that. Leaving the dog in the car. She got 5 years minus time served. Yeah, so maybe about 2.5 years. And, with the first child that was killed, there was never any charges brought against. It's like that case. This is another weird case. I think we talked about it. That kid that, like, who was it that died first? Okay, I think the father died first, and he claimed self-defense. He like shot the father, and then the mother. I don't know if it was like a year later, or how long after. Then his mother, him and his mother get into a fight, and he goes, "Oh, she fell on a knife," and she's dead. And then he was found not guilty. What was that kid? He was found not guilty. Some psycho kid. He looks crazy as shit. And there was body cam. I think we watched the body cam. There was body cam where I think the mother had called the cops or something, and the kid was threatening to kill her and all this kind of shit. And he got Baker Act or whatever. And then later on, you see she's dead. It's like, how the hell? What's up with some of these juries? That story was weird too. And they're looking into the father, like maybe to charge him for the father's death. The kid got away. Kids are wild too, man. Kids are kind of wilding out, killing their parents for whatever reason. Don't let them play Pokemon. There was a one parent that told their, I think it was their son, go get a job. Just sitting around here and not work. Go get an effing job. And the kid went and tried to kill them. I think he killed one of the parents. Ah, damn, Eva. That's a good question. Do you believe the Menendez brothers were SA'd? I don't know, man, because I haven't like followed that case in depth, but you know, and I don't even think have I watched the documentary. I've seen videos and I've seen some of the story. I didn't watch the trial. Some people say you got to watch the trial. I know that the SA stuff came out. I thought it came out later. Like they made the claim, but that there was like a letter that was found, right? I thought they said the letter had no date. I don't know if it's true. But part of me feels like they were spoiled brats, and I don't know why they killed the mother. If they were being abused by the father, why they killed the mother, or I don't know if they were trying to say the mother was complicit or accepted it. And what they killed them, but they did overkill. And then they went on this shopping spree and partying and buying all this shit. I don't feel like they're innocent. I don't, you know, but I don't know. Could you say their time is served? They served their time. They should be let out. I don't know. It's really hard to say. I don't know. They shot them parents up and lied and all kinds of stuff. I don't know. So it's interesting. Oh, by the way, for politics, I haven't really talked much about it, but I still kind of follow a little bit. So I haven't really, the only thing, what I've seen lately, because I sometimes talk to my mother, is the tariffs thing. Anybody that's following the politics stuff, people are very upset about Trump's tariffs. I think yesterday he made some type of announcement. He said Liberation Day, and he had like a chart. It seems like he's put tariffs on a lot of countries or increased them. And so they're pissed off. People are responding. I guess this is live right now. Canada is having something to say. The Mexican president, she's supposed to be talking later today too. People are upset. You know, people are worried about the stocks. You know, what are going to be the effects? You know, some people argue sometimes, you know, this in the long run, it's going to be better. Get what's right, get what's fair. I don't know. So I you know, we'll see. We will see. We will see. And, but all right, guys, I'll talk to you later. I'm going to rest a little bit, take care of a few things in the house, and I should be back. I don't know, unless if something breaking happens 5 minutes, 10 minutes from now, but if not, I'll be back maybe like in 2 hours, 3 hours, something like that. I'll try to schedule something. All right. Thank you.